Hey there, believers. I got another great episode for you this week. Today, I'm bringing on Daniel. And for those of you watching on YouTube, there's no intros until I can figure out what in the world I'm doing as far as getting a new video editor and all that kind of good stuff. So it's just going to be straight to the show, okay? Um, no fancy intro music and thumbnails and cool cover art and all that. Today, I'm bringing on Daniel. He reached out to me. It was recommended that he contact the show because he wanted to come on and share his experiences. It looks like, according to his email, that he's been battling with demonic activity and sleep paralysis episodes since about the age of 3. He goes on to talk about other experiences that he's had, but I'm going to let him go into all of that because he's already waiting for me to bring him on the show here. Let's go ahead and bring Daniel on and just let him fill us in on everything that's led him to write about this.
Bo, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come on the show with you, man. To little backstory for you, actually. To be 100% real with you, I never listened to your show till about 3 weeks ago. And nothing against you or anything. I just didn't know it existed. How I found out though is my mom is a huge fan.
Awesome.
She listens to your show religiously, one thing I want to say to you real quick before I get into everything is, I want to say thank you actually, because being that I grew up in the church, my parents, my parents have always been religious. Every Wednesday, every Thursday, every Sunday, I was in the church. Whether it was youth meetings, Bible study, prayer, whatever you think of, if it was something church related, I was there. But even though I grew up in the church, whenever things would happen to me, and I would try to talk to my parents, my mom and dad would listen, but as a kid, you always have that skepticism, like you don't know if your mom believes you, or if your parents think, oh, you don't do they think you're crazy, or they just think do they think you want attention, or whatever the case was.
Right.
But my mom has been listening to you religiously for, I don't know, for a couple, for a while now, a year or so, and ever since she started listening to your show, she called my older brother one time, Michael, and because he used to do a lot of traveling to work, he would drive about an hour and a half to work. So she's like, "Hey, Mike, listen to this podcast," and he would listen to it, and they would talk about it, and it would be yours, and it would be the confessionals, and there's I think one or two other ones that they would be talking about. And well, she called him one day and she said, "Hey, Michael, I just want to tell you, after listening to these podcasts, I really believe Daniel." She said a lot of stuff that he talks about when he was a kid, a lot of stuff that he tell us. I hear him on other podcasts sometimes, like, kind of similar or whatever. But she just told me, she's like, I really, really believe him now.
Thank
So
you.
now, whenever something happens, I'll just give my mom a call, or I could text her, but hey, mom, this happened last night or whatever. And she's like, well, what did you do? Did you pray? Whatever the case is. And she just wants to hear about it just as much as, other people do. So thank you for that, by the way.
I appreciate your mom, man. That's awesome.
Oh
That,
yeah, dude. My mom is a great woman. Shout out to my mom. Her name's Penny. I know she's gonna be listening to this. So Penny, thank you. Mom, thank you for everything. Thank you for, and actually she's the one that told me to write you. Because I had a night terror about 3, 4 weeks ago, and I texted her and I called her and said, "Hey mom, this is what happened last night." And she's like, "You gotta email Bo." She's like, "You gotta email him." She
yeah,
said,
man.
"Maybe he'll get you on, maybe not, but at least you emailed him, and if he gets you on, you run with it." So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Like I said off air, I thank you, that you would take the time to share your story and to do it here. And it's just it's a humbling experience when somebody opens up, when you don't have to. But I appreciate you sharing it because it's going to help somebody else, I'm sure.
Oh, that's the plan, man.
Yeah.
So what I want to say first off to you is I am a believer. My faith is huge to me. Being a Christian, growing up in the church. When I was younger, my faith wasn't like the biggest, most important thing to me. Of course, I went to church, like I said, but now that I'm an adult, I'm 34 years old. My faith is huge. It's what I try to base my life around. How I treat people, how I talk to people, how I present myself. Try to be in that Christ-like manner. And
Yeah.
I pray that this does. I pray that this does help somebody, and that's why I'm really wanting to talk about it. and to jump in it with you. But I think that it's important that I do express that faith before I talk about this stuff because, this is dark. I'm going to tell you some dark stuff. And I just, that's what keeps me going through the day is my faith. So this started back when I was 3 years old. That I could, as far back as I can remember. I know when you listen to podcasts and stuff like this a lot of times it does happen when they're young. But man, I can remember mine clear as day. And that's what's crazy is so when I was adopted, Michael and I, my older brother, we were adopted. I was 3, he was 4. Um, we were adopted in Nevada. About, I don't know, I would say about a couple months later, my dad got a church opportunity in Conrad, Montana, and we moved to Conrad. And so we lived in Conrad, Montana for about 2 years, maybe about a year and a half, because I remember we moved to California when I was 5. So probably about 2 years. But when we were living in Conrad, we lived in this small house, and I can remember that house so vividly. When you go through the back door, there would be sorry about that. There would be our table, our kitchen table, right through to the left. But it was kind of weird because as soon as you open the back door, going straight up the stairs would be, going straight forward would be the stairs that led to the second floor. And on the second floor, as soon as you got to the top of the stairs, you make a right, and it would lead into our bedroom. Michael's bed would be against the wall, and there would be a small window that led outside, that viewed outside. And there would be a nightstand between our beds with a lamppost that was positioned, there, and then it'd be my bed. And over and to the right, going back towards the stairs would be my mom's desk or my dad's desk, whoever's desk. And what's kind of funny is on that desk, there would be the answering machine. And so, like me and Michael, when we were young, we thought it would be fun because back in the day, we had landlines. And so we had an answer machine, and as soon as we go home from school, or not school, but as soon as we get home, we would run up the stairs, and we would always yell down to the stairs if we had messages. So a lot of times we would yell back, like 0 messages or whatever. But that was where our bedroom was. If you go to the left side, was a big empty room. And what I mean by empty, it was our playroom. Like that's where we would play with our toys, read books, watch some TV, whatever the case was. We'd be up, we'd be spending a lot of our time up there. And in that room was a massive window. Now, let me be real with you. How big that window really was, I can't really tell you because I'm a kid. It was huge to me.
Right.
It was a big window. Now, if it was 8 feet, 6 feet, I really don't know. But it was a good sized window. Now that plays a part here in a little bit. But that window was huge, and it's 2 stories. So you see outside. It was, to me, it was a far way down. Well, I remember it was a Sunday morning. We were told to go to bed, take our Sunday nap. Now I don't remember what time of the day it was, but I do remember that the sun would still come through the windows, so we could still see. Still light in our room. So what I would do is I usually slept with my head in the covers, and the reason why is because as a kid, I could always feel presence, or I could feel somebody staring at me, or whatever the case was. So for me to fall asleep, I like to sleep in the dark. So I would either sleep with my head on the covers, or I would get in position to where I could peek through the covers or whatever, but
Right.
my head was covered. I've always slept like that. But this particular day, Michael's already asleep. I fall asleep a little bit later, and I wake up to my covers being ripped off me, standing at the foot of my bed, clear as day. Now, keep in mind, it's like, I want to say 2, 3 in the afternoon, so the sun's shining through. Clear as day is a figure in black. Like I could see him standing there, clear as day. His face is white. He has like a top hat, but his hair is shaggy and it's coming through, like falling through, and you can see it. And it kind of like, you ever seen Peaky Blinders?
Yeah.
He's kind of wearing like a trench coat like that.
Oh, wow.
And he's just sitting there. He's just standing there staring at me. I would say, but I would say probably 6'4". Huge guy. And when I see him standing there, he lifts his finger up to his lips, and he like smiles behind it, and he gave me that look, like, basically. And as soon as I see him as a kid, I start screaming. Of course, Michael wakes up, he sees him, he starts screaming. My mom hears her screaming, she runs up the stairs, thinks something happens to us. First thing she does is she grabs us, she checks us, make sure, did we fall out of the bed? Did one of us get hurt? Well, something happened to us. So she doesn't see him. But she gets to the side of the bed, she hugs me, see if I'm okay. I'm screaming, I'm scared. So what she does is she brings us downstairs, and Michael comes with us, and he's scared too. I think a lot of it was because my reaction, me being so scared, it scared Michael too. Michael did see him,
Yeah.
but I don't know how long he saw him for.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I don't know if he saw him in passing or if he was, because Mike and I really didn't talk about it. We were kids. But at the foot of the stairs, or at the bottom of the stairs at the table, my mom had pulled out the chair and she sat down and she was holding me. And the way that she was holding me, and then she had Michael in her arms, so she was hugging us both. And the way that she had me positioned, I could see clearly up the top of the stairs. And he was standing at the top of the stairs, staring down at me. And he kept doing that face. And so I was telling my mom, I was like, Mom, there's somebody there. There's somebody there. And she's like, Daniel, there's nobody there. She's like, there is nobody there. And
Mm.
she kept hugging me. She would pat my back and she would comfort me, as best as she could. But
Mm.
that's the first time I ever saw him.
Oh my gosh, man.
And yeah, man, it was crazy. It's thinking back about it, it is freaky.
That
But
is, and that's scary for a kid
yeah.
because like and no no offense to your mom, she can't help that she didn't see it,
Hmm.
but for a kid to not have anybody believing,
Yeah.
that sense of being alone, stuck with that kind of stuff, man, that is frightening.
And I think that's how they grip you.
Yeah,
Is because a lot of times people either they believe you, or they don't want to hear about it, or they don't want to believe it, and so they kind of like, oh, it's nothing, there's nothing there. But for sure, man, it was freaky.
mm,
And it's something that's been with me, my whole life now. So like when we were kids, we had a lot of anger issues, Michael and I. We came from a really rough home before we were adopted. A lot of stuff that happened in our childhood. And we remember a lot of it. Even though it was before I was 3. I remember quite a bit of it. And so like I remember, talking to my mom about stuff and stuff like that. But we had a lot of anger as kids growing up. And so what would happen is Michael or we would get into tantrums, pretty bad. And I remember my mom, she would pull us into the bathroom sometimes and like stand us in front of a mirror and be like, who is this? Where's my son at? Try to make us realize, we're not behaving like how we behave. And I think my mom always knew there was a darkness that followed us.
yeah.
But I think she did her best to shield us and protect us from it. And so I remember one time Michael had a really bad tantrum. And I remember my mom had came up to, she came up and she like hugged him because he was just going crazy, basically like just, being a kid, was really angry, and she was hugging him so that way he would, couldn't hurt me or hurt himself or hurt her. And keep in mind, he's 4 at the time. And my mom's holding him. And this is up in our playroom where that room is. Now, it may not seem like a big deal right now, like as I'm telling you, but what happens is later, my mom told us this when we were older and we could handle it. She said, my mom always told me and Michael, she's like, the Lord has his hand on you guys, and you guys are anointed by God. He has big plans for your guys' lives. And she says, how I know this is that one day when Michael was throwing a tantrum, she said, when I was holding him, she said, I heard a demon or the devil or whoever you want to say it was. She said, I heard them tell me to throw Michael out the window.
Oh my goodness.
And she said, I told him no. And she said, I heard him tell him, say, throw them out the window, both of them. And my mom's like, no, I will not throw my kids out the window. She said, these are my boys. They're anointed by God. God has his
Amen.
hand on them. And she said that she just prayed and prayed over us. And she held us, and especially Michael, because he's the one that's really going through that tantrum. And
Amen.
she's like, she told us about that later. She's like, son, I know that God has big plans for you, because why would the devil or the demons want me to get rid of you guys when you're kids?
Right.
And so she said that, she just knew. She knew that God had plans for us, and it was just crazy, something like to hear about that when you get older. And we reminisce on our childhood, and we go through memories and we talk to each other.
Right.
That one to be so real to us. Now when I was 5, we ended up moving to California. small town called Big River, California. My dad had an opportunity there to be a church planter. And so when we first moved there, it was, man, it was a small church. It was four of us. It was my mom, my dad, and my brother and me. We lived there until I was 16. And we you know, by the time we left, the church that my mom had built together was a pretty good sized church. You know, it was about my numbers may be off, but I would say probably about 150 to 200, you know, fully when
That's a good
church.
sized church. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty decent sized church. And so like it's a big part of our life. You know, we were there for such a long time. My dad pastors that church now. It's
Awesome.
nowhere near where it used to be. Just a lot of things throughout the years, but so he's trying to finish his ministry there before he retires. But so when we lived in this house there, we know a lot of things would happen throughout the years. Whether doors were shut in front of me, lights would turn off, I would see the demon stand over me when I'm sleeping. Just a lot of different things throughout those years, and I have a few that I'm going to talk to you about. So when we were still young, I want to say Michael was probably third grade, fourth grade, maybe, yeah, third or fourth probably. My mom will probably correct me later after she hears this, but I know we were young. I know we were younger, and Mike and I are 13 months apart. So when he was in, you know, third, I was second. When he was in fourth, I was in third. It was around that age. We had our own rooms, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And so she would, you know, clean the house or clean her rooms when we were at school or wherever the case was. And I remember one time we came home from school, um, and my mom's sitting at the head of the table, and which is weird. If my mom's at the table when we come home, you knew you were in trouble for something. And because she was usually on the couch or she would be in the kitchen or doing, you know, doing whatever, you know, she was doing for the day. But she was at the kitchen, she was at the table, and we come in and she has these notebooks basically sitting in front of her. I would say there's two of them or so. And she has to sit down at the table and she's like, you know, basically, how was her day? Good. And what's up? And she's like, who drew these? And she opens up these notebooks and there's drawings in there and they're demonic.
Oh wow.
And I know Michael drew them. Michael knew he drew them. And so she looks at us and she's like, who drew these? And of course, we're kids. We don't want to get in trouble. So we're quiet at first. And she's like, well, she's like, I found these in your room, Michael. She's like, did you draw these? And he shakes his head. And my mom's like, you drew these? And he's like, yes. Keep in mind, he's a kid. And these are beautiful. Like, I don't want to say beautiful, but they're just very detailed drawings.
Yeah.
It's like somebody guided his hand, basically.
Yeah.
And mom's like, you drew these. Like, she couldn't believe he drew them. And he's like, yeah. And then she looked at me. She's like, Daniel, who drew these? And I was like, he did. Michael drew. And she's like, I could tell she was freaked out by it. And so when my dad got home, she told my dad about it. Now, I don't know if she had called him earlier that day and gave him a heads up or what, because we didn't have cell phones then.
Right.
But I know that whenever something happened, when my dad would come home, she would talk to my dad about it. So she talked to my dad, and they ended up taking Michael and those pictures, and they went into the desert because we lived in the desert, and they ended up burning them. And they prayed over him. They prayed over Michael. But so like I know that's why I understand. Mom, I know my mom knew there was some kind of darkness that followed us.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
She obviously believed. She knew
yeah,
what was up.
and I think that a lot of it was that she kind of like tried to protected us from it.
Yeah.
So she, whenever we would talk about it, she didn't like to really go in depth with it with us as kids and whatnot like that. But I know that she did. I know that she believed it. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes here.
Oh no, you're good, man.
But
Can you remember what these things looked like in the images? Like were they
yeah,
like
yeah, it was the demon that followed us. Now, so here's the thing is this it's been this particular demon since I was 3. Like I still see him to this day, and his looks are basically the same, except he doesn't have the hat anymore. I haven't seen him wear the hat in years, but everything else is the same. And now when he appears to somebody else, he may look different because
oh,
keep in mind when this is something I haven't told you is, but when we got older, my parents ended up adopting four kids. They're all biological. So I have three sisters and a brother that my parents had adopted. And every single one of them with me have experienced something with him. So, and that's how you know it's real. Like, cause he
Yeah.
would, cause you know, when it just happens to you, you're thinking like, am I just seeing things? Am I crazy? What's going on? But every single one of my siblings have experienced something with him.
Hmm.
And 9 times out of 10, I was there. And I'll go into more detail for you about some stuff about that. But so like with that being said, it's like that's who it was. That's who Michael was drawing. Now there may have been other entities with it, or there may have been other drawings. I can't remember exactly what the details of the pictures were, but I know they were of him. And he does have a name. And so like so when Mike and I talk about him, if I say his name, Michael obviously knows exactly what I'm talking about. Some of my closest friends who I've talked to throughout the years, if I say his name, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Same thing with my mom. If I say his name, she knows it. Um, and so like that's what it was though. And it was I would say they were dark enough to scare my mom to freak her out a little bit. Obviously she held it together in front of us.
Right.
But for them to take Michael into the desert to bring the pictures away from the house and to pray over it and to basically anoint, the ground and stuff, it was big. As a child, I didn't realize the importance of it, like why and all that stuff. But as an adult, you realize, that's something was crazy, something happened. And then throughout those years, I know my parents have anointed that house quite a few times actually. I remember one time things were getting there's a lot of darkness and oppression in that home. Here's the thing too, Bo, it's not the house. It's always wherever I'm at. And so like we they anointed. I remember one night they took us out and they anointed every corner of the foundation. My parents anointed the doorways, the window seals. They prayed over all of it. And it helps, like it does.
Yes.
But then somehow they always come back. Or something happens to where a door opens and as a kid you don't realize the stuff that you do allows stuff to open, and that's basically what would happen is my parents would do their best to protect us and shut it out. I got a funny question for you.
Hey,
You're
man.
gonna talk about when I tell you this, but uh do you ever met somebody who doesn't sleep with sheets on their bed?
No.
Well, you just did. I don't. um yeah, I seriously don't. The only I from the last year and a half, um, I sleep with a fitted sheet, but
Yeah.
other than that, I don't sleep with sheets, and there's a real reason why. So when we had after we adopted we call them the four little ones. They're not little anymore. Actually, today is my baby sister's 24th, no, 20, yes. I don't know. She's 9 years younger than me. I'm 34. So what, that 25?
Yeah.
So she's
Yeah.
just today's her 25th birthday.
Well, happy
Um,
birthday to her.
yeah, happy birthday to Janie. But so they're not little anymore, but as we were growing up, we called them the four little ones. And so when we adopted the four little ones, how it was in the state of California, we had to obviously make sure that the house was whether they did that, they were still young at the time to where my parents had paired up Nicole and Katie into a room, and then they put Janie and Cody into another room. And at that time in the house in California, we had a big old garage. And then there was a second garage that was attached to the first one. It was smaller, but it was still pretty big. And that's where my dad's office originally was. But once after we adopted the four little ones, they actually turned that into Michael and I's bedroom. So that's where we stayed. And to go into that garage, you would go through the living room, go through the kitchen, go through or the kitchen, and then go through or the dining hall, and then go through the kitchen. And there would be a door that led into that garage. You open that door, you could walk all the way through the garage, and then it leads to another door. You open that door, it goes through to our bedroom, and then there's another door that you could open that would lead outside, straight outside. And so my mom and dad's role was, keep in mind we were, I don't know, 11, 12 at the time, Mike and I. My mom's rule was like, you cannot sneak out at night.
Right.
Um, and so, that was the rule. And so we were out in the garage, which was our bedroom. And at that time, man, this is probably when I was 12 or 13. And at 12 or 13, I was 6 foot, 6'1". And so my dad had got me a longer bed so that way my feet wouldn't dangle off the bed. And so that's what my bed was, and it was against the wall. And at that time, I had a red comforter, and my sheets were tan, like a brownish tan. And Mike, we had a futon in that room, and it went into a bunk bed, or as a bunk bed into a futon, whatever you want to say it. And my brother Michael would sleep on the top bunk. I would sleep on that long bed, and we had a dog at the time. She was a golden retriever, and we had rescued her. And to be honest with you, she was pretty fat. And so she slept on the futon, and we would have to lift her up to get her on the futon. And and so that's how our bed was. Well, at that time, that's at the time of age where you have a lot of friends spend the night, or you go stay the night at your friend's house, whatever the case was. Well, that time we had asked our parents if we could have two friends stay the night. And surprisingly, they said yes. They usually allow us to have one, but for both of us to have a friend over was a
Yeah.
deal. So we both had a friend over that night. It was a Friday night. And what was cool about being in the garage is that we could be as loud as we wanted. We could, stay up really late. Nobody would bother us because they couldn't hear us. So we could play video games, or we could, watch movies or whatever the case was. So that's what we did. At that time, we had a Nintendo GameCube, and there's a Star Wars game that came out at the time. And I don't remember the name. I think it was called Clone Wars, or was the game too. But it was the four of us, we could run around in this arena and be Jedis. And we thought it was the coolest thing. So we stayed up really late playing this game, and then we watched the Two Towers, the Lord of the Rings movie. And so it was, by the time we got done doing all that stuff, it was probably like 2 o'clock in the morning. And everybody's asleep in the house. And so we were, it was me, Michael, my older brother, his friend that stayed the night, his name was Omero. And then my friend that stayed the night his name was Mikey. His name was Michael too, but we called him Mikey to differentiate, to
Right.
separate there. And so what we did is Omero had the idea, hey, let's tell ghost stories. Let's see who could scare each other the most. So that's what we did, 12, 13, 14-year-old boys in a room just telling ghost stories and trying to scare each other. Well, we end up scaring each other. It gets to the point where Ome's like, dude, he's like, your dad's a pastor. Let's go get him. Let's go pray over us because we're so scared. We couldn't sleep. And so that day, though, just to backtrack a little bit, that day, my dad at that time, he would still, help us with our laundry. And so he had actually washed my bed that day. My dad, bless his soul, when he would wash your bed and stuff, he would make it for you too. So like my bed was made. Didn't sleep in it that night. It was perfectly made, clean sheets, clean comforter, everything. And we were scared so bad that we decided, let's go wake up my dad and have him pray over us.
Right.
So we open up the door that leads into the garage. And keep in mind, have you ever been in the desert when it's dark?
No.
It,
Well, yeah, yeah, in San Antonio boot camp. Yeah.
it's a different kind of dark. I'm telling you, when it's dark, it is black. And when we opened up that door to lead to the garage that leads to to the other door, it was just pitch black in there. There's no lights in the garage. But we waited for our eyes to adjust so we could see how to, to the door. But I remember when we were going across, it just felt eerie. Now, keep in mind, we told ghost stories, so I don't know if we were just feeling like, because we were scared or whatever, but we just felt eerie. And it felt like it was taking forever to get across. And when we got to the door and we opened it, we go inside to the house, pitch black, no lights on, everybody's sleeping. And so we all looked at each other and we're like, nah, we're not going through the house. We're not doing it. And
Right.
so we decided, we're not going to wake up my dad. We decided against it. So we decided to go back into the room. So we do. We leave the house, go back into the room. And as soon as we go into our bedroom, the door that leads into the house, the garage door, slams 4 times. And it was so intense that the garage door itself that raises up was rattling. I don't know how my parents didn't hear it. I don't know how my siblings didn't hear it, but it scared us. You
Four
know,
times. One for
yes,
each
four
of you.
times. Yeah, all four of us heard it. We were not. That's how we knew it was real.
Yeah.
All four of us had heard it, and it was. Obviously we didn't really sleep that night because of it. So what we did is we ended up pulling out the futon, and all four of us. got on the futon. We ended up passing out together. I don't know what time we fell asleep, but we finally did. The next morning was Saturday. My dad comes and wakes us up. One of our family traditions is every Saturday, my mom would make a big breakfast. It's because it was the one day of the week that all of us could be together. So we would do that. And that morning she made Belgian waffles. And my dad came, woke us up. We all went to the kitchen. We each had a waffle, and just we decided we are gonna go back to the room and figure out what we are gonna do for the day. Ome, Ome sat on the end of the futon. Michael and then Mikey, the three of them sat on the futon. I sat on my bed, and as we're sitting there, we're talking about what we're gonna do. We decided we're gonna ride the quads down to the river and spend the day at the river. And I leaned back on my bed. And when I lean back, I'm holding myself like this, and I put my hand down, and I feel something wet on my bed.
Mm.
And I'm like, what is that? So I pull my hand away, and my hand is red. And I look at Michael and Ome, and because Mikey is playing the Star Wars game, and I look at Michael and Ome, and I'm like, hey, what is this? And I turn my hand around like this, and they can see it. And it's red. And Ome's face looked like he saw a ghost.
Yeah, man.
Mike's like, dude, what is that? And I was like, dude, it smells like blood. And Mike's like, what? And I take the comforter and I pull it back. And in the middle of my bed is a puddle of red. Keep in mind, no one ever slept in that bed.
Right.
We were all on the futon. FEMA was too fat. There's no way she could get on that bed.
Right.
She slept on the floor the whole night. No explanation. And Ome told us, he's all sitting there, and he was the most scared out of all of us at the time. And we take the sheet off, we take the comforter off, we throw on the wash, trying to hide it. Because let's be real, I mean, how many parents are going to believe that 14s in a room don't know where the blood came from?
Right. Right.
And so end up washing the sheets, and the blood won't come out of the sheet. Now, I could have washed it probably 3 or 4 times and probably got it out, but as a kid, I'm already terrified. So I ended up taking the sheet. And if you open at the front of the garage, there was a little section you could pull up, and that's where we kept our trash cans in. So we lifted up that garage, took the sheets and threw them in the trash. And to this day, I don't sleep with sheets because of it. Ome said that night, when we started to fall asleep, he said that he saw somebody staring at us through the window. And we're like, what? And I was like, what did he look like? And Ome described him to the T.
Man.
And so we weren't sure, I thought that Ome was trying to scare us, again, because we just told ghost stories. But the way that he had described it, I knew he wasn't just seeing things. And being that we had 2 windows, one was against the wall that was next to the door, and there was one that was above my bed, and they both were obviously outside, that led outside. So for him to see somebody standing out in the desert looking through the window, I was like, man. And then he described it. I was like, yep, Mike and I knew. We knew. But that's why I don't know where the blood came from. I don't know what it was from. I don't know how it got there, to be honest with you. I mean, that's just something, as a young teenage boy, it scared me. And it just, obviously it scared me to the fact that I don't sleep with sheets anymore.
Yeah, man.
But it was pretty intense there.
And that's something for people to think about too. Like while this is happening, this is a very Christian home, and it still is getting in there and doing this stuff, and bold enough to do it in front of 4 witnesses. I don't know where this is going, beyond this, but this seems like a very powerful evil presence, man.
It is. And that's the thing is I don't talk about it much because it is. And I'm a real big believer that there's power in names.
Right.
And so that's why I don't like to talk about it, because I don't want to give it power.
Right.
But I will tell you, last night, man, I didn't sleep with a wink. I felt his presence all in the room. Nothing happened, thankfully.
Yeah.
But he was definitely letting me know that he was aware, and he knew, obviously they knew what I was going to be doing today.
Yeah.
And I could not sleep, man. I was just tossing and turning, and so I just prayed, and Lord, let me get 2 hours. Lord, let me get an hour, whatever.
Amen.
And thankfully I was able to fall asleep about 4 a.m. and woke up, but it's been it is a very powerful presence. You'll hear some stuff about it more as we
Yeah.
continue, and the power of it. But the thing that's crazy is, is people need to realize that yes, we are we were a very, and we still are a very strong Christian household. God is very much real. So is the devil. And the devil, he comes to seek and destroy, and that's what he was trying to do, is destroy this family,
Yeah.
and just try to tear us apart. And so, like, obviously I didn't tell my parents. Now there's going to be some stories I tell you that my mom and dad probably never even heard. So like when my mom listens to us, it's kind of cool for her too, because it'll be new stories to her. I think I may have told her about those sheets like later throughout my life, but I could tell you then and there, I didn't tell him. No way.
Right. Yeah.
I just told my dad I don't sleep with sheets no more. And I don't know how, but he just accepted it. He didn't fight me on it, and that was it. And so, I was 34 years old. I sleep with a fitted sheet now. And the real reason why I sleep with a fitted sheet is because I have two dogs,
Right.
and I put them outside. If they jump in, I don't want them to get my actual mattress all dirty from being out. So they get the fitted sheet dirty. I'll wash it and, and put a new one up. But
Right.
that was it. And so, like I said, man, I remember later my parents went away to the house. I really don't remember too much else in that house, except for just the stuff that happened to me. Like I would see him stand over me when I sleep or whatever, or I'd see him in the mirror. I would see him after I get out of the shower. He would write on the when your mirror would steam up, he would write on there.
Mm.
And I would always tell my mom, and she would always think that, oh, what's your siblings messing with you or whatever. But about a year and a half ago, I got out of the shower, and I'm 33, probably 32 at the time. I got out of the shower and there's right down the mirror. I take a picture of it, send it to my mom. I say, hey mom, see, it still happens. And
Wow.
my younger brother, he's not little anymore, he's 27, but my younger brother lives with me. We lived together now for about 7 years. He wasn't home. And at that time, we both had our own bathrooms, own showers, all that stuff. So he never was in my bathroom.
Yeah,
And,
man.
and it was basically like it said hi, and then it says I still see you. And so
Oh,
like yeah, I sent that to my mom. I was like, Mom, it's like, see, I'm not tripping. And so and of course she had to listen to you guys and some other podcasts at the time. So she believed it then for sure. And she's like, pray, pray,
yeah, man.
trying to comfort me as best she can from being her living back in California.
Hey, you know what's on my bathroom mirror? Verses from Psalm 91, man.
That's that's good. I don't like mirrors, man. I don't, and that's a
We
big reason of it. But
Yeah, man. We took a Sharpie and we wrote verses, me and my wife, we wrote verses of Psalm 91 on all four corners of that mirror. We don't play around here, man. It's like
yeah, dude, that's the
it's just
part.
real, man.
It is. It is. It's very real. So, like I said, though, all my siblings have had experiences, and one that I really remember with one of my siblings is Katie. Katie is, it goes Michael, me, Nicole, Katie. So she's the fourth oldest. She's 5 years younger than me. Yeah, 5 years younger than me. We have moved to Wellsville, Missouri. My dad was got a pastoring job there, in the church that he grew up in. Actually, it's kind of cool. But at that time, my grandma, I called her Granny. Well, actually, it's funny because I had I had two grandmas growing up. I was blessed with that. One of them still alive. But how it was, one lived in Arizona, and that was my mom's mom, and one lived in Missouri, and that was my dad's mom. So we would call them Grandma Arizona, Grandma Missouri. That's how we would, get them, differentiate them or whatever, how you ever say that. And so at that time, my grandma Missouri wasn't doing the best in health, and my dad was, he wanted to move back home, so that way we could be closer to her in case he needed her. So we did, and we moved back home. We lived in a parsonage at the time. It was actually a pretty good size home. When you go into it, my down the hallway, my mom's room, my mom and my dad's room was, and whatnot, and downstairs is where we would stay. And for a while before, I think it's before, I don't remember how exactly why we did it this way, but for a while, I was in the far room downstairs. Michael was in this other room, and then Cody was in like wasn't really a room, but we made it a room for him. And so that's how the three boys were downstairs, the three girls were upstairs, and it worked out really, really well. And but later, Nicole and Katie ended up going downstairs into the room that I used to have, and I went to the other room. Mike and I basically shared. I think it's because when I went off to college and I came back, or when Mike and I would, we left that room available for us, so that way if we ever needed a place, we would just crash there. And so Mike and I were staying in that room together, but Michael's gone. Michael started dating a girl. He ended up, him and her were living together, pretty serious at the time. And so I was home. I always had that room to myself. Katie would come down sometimes, and we would watch Smallville, or we would watch Supernatural or whatever. And and so one night she had came down, and she said, "Daniel, I keep hearing stuff." And I was like, "What do you mean?" So she's like, "I keep hearing stuff upstairs." And I said, "Like what?" And we had a Cocker Spaniel at the time. Her name was Show Me. My mom had got her when we lived in North Dakota for a year. And because she missed home, she called her Show Me because Missouri is a Show Me state.
Right.
And her middle name was Love. And so it was, a family joke, Show Me Love. And I was like, "Well, it's probably Show Me just running around upstairs, And she's like, "No, it's something different." And she's like, "Listen." And so I'm laying on my bed, and I actually had my laptop on because I was watching, so I don't remember probably Smallville or something, and she's standing right next. She's a listen. And so I'm listening. And sure enough, I hear something. And I look at her, I was like, "Yeah, that's not Show Me. That's too loud." And so I put my laptop down and I look at her, and we're getting ready to walk out the room. And I turn back and I look at her, and I'm probably 19, 18, 19, and she's probably like, I don't know, 13, 14 at the time. And so I look at her, I was like, "Katie," I was like, "Don't come upstairs." And she's like, "What?" And I knew me telling her that scared her, but I was doing it to protect her. And I said, "Katie," I said, "Well, don't come upstairs." I said, "There's something up there." And so I'm start walking up the stairs slowly. I'm listening. She's at the foot of the stairs just watching me. And I look back at her, and as I do that, you hear clear as day, you hear somebody say her name, and she just turns ghostly white. She looks at me, and she's like, "Did you?" I was like, "Yeah, I heard it." And they said her name again. I was like, "Katie, whatever you do, not come upstairs. Do not come up these stairs."
Yeah.
And so she's saying at the bottom. I walk up the stairs. I go to the top, and our table's big. There's 8 of us in our family, so we got a big table. And trying to position ourselves as well. And how the table was, it has the head and then the end, and then we had three sets on each side, 3 chairs. And how it was would be my dad at the head, my mom at the end, my dad at the head, my mom at the end, and there would be Janie, Michael and Janie were across from each other. Me and Katie were across from each other at the table, and then Cody and Nicole were across from each other at the table. And that's how we had sit. That's where we had silent seatings. And I made it easy, so now we fought who we sat by. But when I got to this top of the stairs, I kid you not when I tell you this. Now, keep in mind, it's probably like midnight, 1 in the morning. My parents are sound asleep. Nicole sound asleep. Cody, Janie both sound asleep. Michael's not home. And it's just me and Katie awake. And I see the chair where my dad would sit in scoot out. And as it scoots out from the table, it starts going around the table. And I'm watching it, and it just goes around the table. And you could hear it squeak like, on the floor basically because it's tile.
Yeah.
And I'm looking. I just closed the door behind me that leads downstairs so that way Katie can't come up. And I watched this chair go all the way around the table, and it stops at my dad's spot, and it gets slammed back into the table. That's the only thing that happened, but I don't know why, and that's what it was like. I didn't see nothing. There was nobody there. Show Me was not even around. I think she was in my mom and dad's room sleeping. But I waited there a good 5 minutes or so to make sure nothing else happened. So that way Katie was okay. Because I heard something say Katie's name. Katie heard it say its name twice, or say her name twice. And so I made it to where she was safe. Um, and then once something happened, I opened the door. I said, "Katie, you're good. You can come back upstairs." And that's what she did. She came upstairs and she went back to her room. We ended up not watching TV that night, but it was freaky
Yeah,
um,
man.
for her. Um, to me, it's something I was kind of used to, like seeing things and hearing things. Another thing that happened in that house is Michael was home one weekend. I don't know if he's just visiting or if he came home to stay. I can't remember. But every Saturday, my parents would go grocery shopping. And so the deal was they would go grocery shopping and we would have to clean the house as the kids.
Mhm.
And so that's what we would do. And it worked out really well. My parents were smart, they planned that stuff. But so they went grocery shopping and we were cleaning the room or cleaning the house. Upstairs at that time, we had a big bathroom that all four or six of us kids shared. And we had a big old mirror. And I told you I don't like mirrors. We had a big old mirror up there. Actually, that this day it was just me and Michael. I think the kids went to the pool, and me and Michael were home alone. My parents were gone grocery shopping. Michael's downstairs. I go upstairs to brush my teeth, and the way that you could look in the mirror, you could position, you could look in the mirror, and you could see down the hallway. And if you look just right, you can see down the hallway, and there's a wall, like a retaining wall, that was the way that the living room was. You go from the kitchen, and it would go off to like a T section almost. You go straight ahead, it go be the front door. You make a right, it goes into the living room. You make a left, it goes on the hallway, and there's that wall right there. And on that wall, my mom put all of our pictures
Mhm.
of our school pictures, basically.
Right.
And so I'm in the bathroom brushing my teeth, and I could see down, the mirror, and it goes down to the hallway, and it goes to that wall where the pictures are. And it's 11 o'clock in the morning, 11, 10 and 30, 11 o'clock. And I see something standing there. And I know me and Michael were home alone, and I see something standing there, and I'm like, dude, I'm looking. And when I'm looking, I kind of peek like this, and he's standing underneath my picture. And I'm like, I peek and I make a jolt towards it, and it takes off. I hear it booking, and I'm like, what? So I'm running after it, and I go downstairs. I hear it run down the stairs, and I run down the stairs after it, and then my bedroom door swings open. Michael's sitting on his bed playing PlayStation, looks over, and he sees me running into the doorway, and
Mhm.
he's like, what was that? And I was like, bro, something was upstairs. Something came down. He's like, I heard, even though no, I heard it. He's like, I heard the steps before you. And so like just like little eerie things like that, it always lets me know it's around.
Yeah, that ain't little, man. That's big, eerie things. Like,
Well, see, like I guess eerie is small to me because I'm used to it. I
yeah, yeah.
just
And by this age, you're done playing around with it. Like you're ready
yeah,
to go whoop it. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. So like like now, because I've been dealing with stuff like this so long, it don't scare me as bad as it used to. So I'm
Right.
always trying to, if I hear things, and like I said, Cody and I lived together for 7 years, and there'll be times I go and check on him at night. I'll go open his door to see if he's okay,
Yeah.
because I get that feeling, and I just know something's gonna happen. So later, Nicole and I end up living together for a little bit. Now this one's a little freaky. Um, Nicole is older than Katie. She's younger than me. She's 4 years younger than me. At this time, she was a sophomore in college, and she went to Southwest Baptist University. She was doing okay, but for some reason, my mom said, "Hey, Danny, you should, why don't you and Nicole live together?" We had, and I don't remember if she was just like struggling with being home, away from home, or whatever the case was, but we came up with the idea that we would live together for a little bit. And so we did. We ended up living together for a year. That year was rough. Nicole and I would always we were so much alike that sometimes we would fight over stupid things, or she would do something I wouldn't like, or I would do something she wouldn't like, whatever, siblings.
All right.
But that year we fought more than we ever really fought.
Mm.
And looking back at it now, I know she'll say the same thing. It was just real big oppression there. Now, one thing, praise to my mom graduated college. Well, so did my dad, but what's so big about my mom graduating, she was the first in her family. And so when she got her bachelor's degree, and she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure she got her master's later, but she may not have. But I know she got her bachelor's, and she graduated from Grand Canyon University. And when she graduated, my dad, knowing that was such a big deal for her, they bought plane tickets for all
Wow.
8 of us, to fly back to California, or Arizona, and to see my mom walk for her graduation.
Yes.
Yeah, so it was huge. It was very, very cool. But at that time, Nicole and I were still living together. I was working at Taco Bell as a crew member, and I was a closing crew member, so I closed every night that I worked. Nicole worked while she went to school. She was a waitress for a lot of times, and so our schedules just didn't really compensate with each other at all. Like, she would work during the day, I'd work during the night, so we hardly ever really saw each other. And one thing about her, Nicole, is when what we would do, which I thought was always cool, is when she would come home or when I would come home, we would always knock on each other's door and say, "Hey, we're home." So that way, if you hear somebody walking around, you knew it was one of us.
Yep.
And so every time that I would come home, I would always I'd knock on the door and say, "Hey, Nicole, I'm home," just so you know. Um, the way that was a small apartment that we lived in, and when you walked into the apartment, our living room was right there, right away. You go down to the hallway, and it was that one was a T section. To the right was my room. To the left was hers. I remember one night. Well, actually, let me finish this one before I do that one. The night before the plane ride, I had to close. So Nicole and I came with a plan that she would pack, get all of her stuff ready. She would go to sleep. I would wake her up when I got home. I would pack, or I would already be packed, but I would get my stuff. And I said, Nicole, let's just do this. I'll get home about 4 in the morning. I said, I'll get my stuff loaded up in the car. I'll load your stuff up, and then I'll come wake you up. And then we'll just hop in the car and we'll drive to St. Louis, to stay at Michael's, my older brother and his wife's, for a little bit. And then we'll catch the plane, and, or meet up with our family. And so that was the plan. Well, I come home, and it was probably about 4 o'clock when I get home in the morning. And this is a first because Nicole never did this. The lights were on. And I thought that was weird because Nicole never, I mean, she would keep maybe the kitchen light on for me or something, but almost all the lights were on.
Hmm.
And bedroom door was open, which she never did. She always kept her bedroom door shut. And so I thought that was so weird. But I get home, she's passed out. And the funny thing about Nicole, not knocking her, but she'll laugh when she hears this. She sleeps like a zombie, like a mummy, basically. She'll sleep with her arms crossed above her chest and sleep on her back like that. She's always slept like that. And it just cracked us up. But I could see her in her bed and she's sleeping. So I go and, just like I said, I go and grab my stuff. I start loading up in the car, and because I don't want to wake her up yet. And I go get into, sorry, I keep hearing things. That's why I look up.
Hmm.
So, and my dogs are outside. But so when I go to enter her bedroom, I go up, I say, "Hey, Nicole, I'm trying to wake her up. Not, I don't want to scare her or anything. But what I didn't want to do is exactly what I did. So when I touched her, and I touched her arm, I was like, "Nicole," she wakes up screaming and she starts swinging at me.
Oh
And
wow.
I was like, "Dude, it's me, Nicole, it's me. It's me." And she started, like, it scared her so much she had tears in her eyes. I knew something was wrong.
Yep.
And I was like, "Dude, what is wrong?" And she's like, shook it off, but basically like she had a bad dream, is what she was saying. And I was like, "Okay." So I end up, getting her stuff loaded up. She's just sitting there, just kind of scared from me waking her up. And we load up the car, and I was like, "Hey, you ready to go?" And she's like, "Yeah." And let's go. Let's get out of here. And so I was like, "All right." So we get in the car and we start driving. And it's about, oh man, I think 3.5 hours drive, 4 hours or whatever. I can't remember exactly, but it was a good distance to drive to St. Louis. And we were in the car. She's like, we start listening to music. She starts cooling down, and starts calming out. And finally she gets the nerve, and she's like, "Damn, I gotta ask you something." I was like, "Yeah, sure." At that time, Taco Bell uniforms were all black, like the crew members. We had a black polo shirt, black pants, black shoes, black hat. And this is like 2010. And so we're driving, and she's like, "I need to ask you something." I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "Please don't take this the wrong way." And I was like, "I won't." And she's like, "I'm serious when I ask you this. Did you come home last night?" I was like, "What?" I was like, "No." She's like, "Come on." She's like, "Stop playing. Did you come home last night?" I was like, "No, Cole, I didn't come home last night. I was at work." And she's like, "Okay." And I was like, "Hey," I said, "What's going on, man?" And she's like, please don't take this the wrong way. I'm just trying to figure this out. And I was like, okay. She's like, did you come in the bathroom when I was taking a shower last night? I
Mm.
looked at her, I'm like, what? And she's like, did you come like grab something like toothpaste or anything? I was like, no. And she got so scared. She grabbed my arm. Daniel, she's like, I saw him. And I was like, who?
Yeah.
And she's like, I saw him. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, damn, last night I was in the shower and she had her shower because she had her own bathroom too. And mine was an actual full tub. Hers was the kind with that glass, you know what I'm talking about? Like the glass shower.
Yep.
Just looked like a cheap apartment shower, basically. What she was she said that she was in the shower and she said, Daniel, I saw somebody in all black in the corner of the bathroom staring at me. And she said, I was too scared to like look over. And she's short, she's like 5 foot. And she's like, I was too scared and to open it or to look. But she said, damn, there's somebody standing there staring at me. And I was like, is that why you were so scared when I woke you up? And she's like, yeah. She's like, because the thing is, she's like, he was there for a while, and she's like, she got to the point. She said that she was so scared that she like slid down into the tub and she like held herself, and she hit her
Oh
face
man.
because she didn't want to see it. And she said that she's like, damn, I didn't think it was you. She's like, and she's like, don't take this the wrong way. She's like, but I was praying that it was you, kind of, because like, how freaky is that? And she's
Right.
like, oh, and that's why I had to ask if it was you because she's like, what was that? And I was like, I was like, it was him. It had to have been him. I was like, because I've been at work all night. And she's like, well, she's like, damn, I scared her to death. And later that time, like another night, I came home and I told her, I said, hey, Nicole, I'm home. And she had a busted lip and it happened in her sleep. And so we had talked about it. I was like, dude, what happened to your lip? And she said that, she had saw him again. And I don't know if it scared her, she hit herself or what, but her lip was busted. And I was like, dude, you look like somebody just punched you. And so it was just like, it got to the point where just so much oppression in that it really hurt our relationship for a long time.
I bet.
We actually separated ways. She went her way, I went my way. And it was just like, because it just caused a lot of bad blood. It was rough. And so like that's why I said that this thing is very powerful and it really sets its grip in and tries to separate families.
Yeah.
And it really did for a while. And that was just one situation where Nicole had saw him and it really it did it. It scared her. And I don't blame her. I was like, I get it, man. I get it. Um and so I think that's the no, two things. Nicole still to this day does not want to hear anything about it. If something ever happens, like the other night, before I moved to my new place, I was giving my dogs a bath and the lights turned off on me, and I recorded it, and I even like flipped the lights so people could hear it. I was like,
Hmm.
look, guys, I was like, the lights turned off, and everybody's like, oh, it's the breaker. I was like, it's not the breaker because I went down to the breaker, checked the breaker, and the bathroom lights on the breaker were connected to my bedroom lights. My bedroom lights are on. My bathroom and the laundry room lights are on. And they're all three connected, and my bathroom lights are off. And what I do is I go downstairs, come back up, and I mess with the light bulbs, and then I just leave it alone because I can't get it turned back on. And then I go back later and I hit the light switch and it turns on. And I record it. I say, "See, look at this." Um, well, I text her and say, Nicole, guess what happened? She's like, nope, don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it
Yep.
because she knows it's real. She believes it. And actually, in my book that I wrote, my novel, that scene I wrote that about her in the shower. I
Yeah.
wrote a scene in my novel for one of my characters. And so I did that because obviously, it is freaky.
Yeah.
It grips you.
It
And
does.
and so like knowing that she went through that, my heart goes for her, and it just yeah, still to this day, man, she don't want to hear nothing about it. She knows it's real.
Yeah. No doubt. Hey, let's
Um
let's take 1 second to you mentioned your novel. You've written books or you're doing more than one novel, right? To talk about your experiences.
yeah, well, I have my first one is published. I published it in December. and it's called The Wringler, A Letter from Home. It is a Christian novel, but it's not a typical Christian book. And what I mean by that is I've had a lot of people read it. I've got a lot of really good reviews on it, but a lot of people tell me it's strictly light versus dark. A lot of that my novel has experiences. Almost everything in that novel that's supernatural is something I personally experienced or somebody in my family has.
Oh, wow.
And so I took it and I put it into my story. It is the first book. I plan on writing three more in this series. That's my dream, is to be a full-time writer. And I believe that God, allows me to go through these experiences to be able to put it into paper and to be, to two things. One, to be a witness of my faith,
Right.
and two, to, help people who go through stuff like this.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, I'm very proud of it. My mom's very proud of it as well.
I
Uh,
bet. Where can we get a copy of it? Where can you buy it at?
You could buy it actually all over, man. You can buy it on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble. You could even buy it from Walmart online. You could buy it. There's so many different outlets like thrift books, all kinds of places. You just search my name, Daniel Swarthout. I don't think there's another author named Daniel Swarthout, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Did it Daniel GT Swarthout, my middle initials, because I just feel like that stands out. So if you search my name on Amazon or you just type in The Wringler, it'll pop right up. And you could definitely find it and get a copy of it if you like.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, look, I never get on my phone while I talk to people, but I'm going to do this while we're talking
yeah,
because my I don't know if it's my memory or my wife says I'm ADHD, but I I will forget by the time we get off here to
no,
order. I'm gonna order it while you go on, man, because I want to get this book.
yeah, cool. One thing I want to say is, I think is really cool is I notice in your emails you put always bring the darkness to light.
Amen.
Yeah. So before and we just, this is the first time you and I've ever talked personally, correct?
Yes. Yes, it is.
I just wanted the people to know this. One thing when I sign books, what I put before my signature,
What's that?
always be a light in the dark.
There you
So
go.
I thought that was really cool that you do that. So I was like, man, that's cool because that's my catchphrase is always be a light in the dark because I want that's what I believe we're called to be as Christians. Is
Yes,
one question for you is, have you personally ever played with a Ouija board?
man, I've been around Ouija boards when they were played with, and it
Uh,
affected me greatly.
yes.
And I got a couple of Ouija board stories things that have went on in my life around Ouija boards. But if I put my hands on one to play it I might have touched one when I was like 12, 13 years old, but probably immediately went and washed my hands because I've been scared to death of Ouija boards when I was a kid, man.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing is, like what we said earlier, we grew up in a Christian home.
Yeah.
My mom, she's very big on it. Don't play with darkness, don't play with fire, you get burnt. And so I've always believed that, and I still do to this day. That's why I never did like Candyman, never did Bloody Mary, all that stuff in the bathroom, never. Because I
Yeah.
was like, dude, I mean, that stuff's real. You call upon the devil and he will appear. And so I never wanted to play with one. But this story goes into another story. That's why I'm telling you it. Now keep in mind too. I do want to emphasize everything. Do you hear that?
I don't think so. Let me turn my volume up.
I don't hear it now, but
What was it?
sorry. A yell,
What was it?
like a
Yeah.
yell, like a screech, like I don't know, man. It's like I said, I know the devil don't like me talking about this stuff just because of this. One time I was video chatting with my parents. They live in California, I live in Missouri, so we video chat. I try to do it once a week. My schedule's crazy, sometimes I'm not able to. But one time before I moved, I was downstairs in my old apartment in the kitchen, and my old apartment was 3 stories. Cody's was at the very top, mine was the second floor, and then the living room, the kitchen, it was downstairs. One time I was video, talking to my parents, and Michael was living with us at the time, but he wasn't home. And Cody was at work, and I'm sitting here just talking to my mom and dad like I'm talking to you. And this is the thing, it was crazy because my mom heard it, my dad heard it too. my bedroom door slams. And my mom's like, what was that? And I was like, it's my door slamming. And she's like, what? She's like, is Cody home? I was like, no, it's just me. And she's like, let's go. She's like, go, what are you gonna do? I was like, I'm gonna go look. So of course I went up there and sure my bedroom door shut. But like little things like that, man, whenever I talk about stuff like this, like I'll be talking to my mom, telling her stuff, and my phone will cut out. And like it actually just shut off, and I'll have to recall her back, or I'll be on the internet with her and the internet just dies. And so like little paranormal things
Yeah,
and
I get that. That happens a lot with
yeah.
my show. Like you mentioned, your mom listens to Tony's show, The Confessionals. Um, just like a weird thing. He was the last person I talked to on here. Me and Tony recorded a show together on March 8th. This is April 1st. I have had 6 or 7 shows scheduled in between, like
Mhm.
since then and today. Every one of them was canceled for one reason or another. It's like there's always something going on or something going wrong, or there's internet interruptions, or there's EVP. Somebody messaged me last week that they thought they heard an EVP on one of my latest episodes. It's constant, man. So I 100% believe that something's interrupting your conversations. I mean, like you know it's there.
Yeah, it actually kind of startled me. I got a chill down my spine when I heard that, and
Well, it
so
might have been picked up on audio, so I'll let you know if it does.
yeah, I was hoping, but I was hoping you heard it too, so that wasn't just me. But what was I saying before that happened? Oh, Ouija boards. And
Yeah.
so these go into play. This story goes into play. So, little back story for you. I used to work with inner city programs. I was with this phenomenal nonprofit organization for 7 years. It was called Sports Crusaders. And what it is they went and they recruited people who play college sports. I played college basketball for 2 years. And when so they recruited me from playing college basketball to go. Basically, what you did is you got with a team. There'd be five, 4, 5, 6 of you, all college athletes, and you would go into locations and you would teach your sport, but through your sport, you would teach the love of Christ.
I love it.
And so it was a phenomenal foundation, phenomenal place that I worked at. And I worked inner city. And on of the 6 years that I worked it, the 5 years I worked it, I was the head of the inner city team, the captain. And then my last year, I was the inner city coordinator for a year, where I coordinated the camps and stuff like that. But when I was doing this, it was all summer.
Yeah.
And so I would be gone all summer and I would drive to different places. I would be in Texas. I would be in Kansas City. I'd be in St. Louis, east side of St. Louis. I went there for 7 years in a row.
Wow.
That's crazy in itself. But I would go to these different locations. And so when I would do is on my weekends, I had to figure out where I was going to stay. And so sometimes I would go and stay in St. Louis with my brother and his wife. And at that time, they were living with his wife's parents because they had a huge house and it was just cheaper for them. So they would stay there. So I would go and stay at their house in a spare bedroom on my weekends. And one Friday, my brother texts me, Michael, and he's like, hey, bro, you'll never believe what Katie found. Katie's his wife. And so for future reference, when I say Katie, I talk about his wife. When I say Leanne, I'm talking about my sister,
Okay.
Katie. So that way it helps you guys know the difference. And so Michael texted me, he's like, bro, you never guess what I just found. I was like, what'd you find? He said, well, actually, Katie found it. The neighbors next door was an old man. He passed away, a very, his 90s. But in his attic, he had a lot of stuff that he just kept a lot of stuff. And up there was a Ouija board. And
Hmm.
Mike's like, bro, we found they had a Ouija board up there. And I was like, yeah, don't touch that, bro. Get rid of that. He's like, no. He said, damn, this one's different. I was like, what do you mean it's different? He's like, it's never been opened. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, it's never been opened, bro. The seal is still in its plastic seal. And he said, it's not like one you see now. This is an old one. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, dude, it's old. Like this dude had it for years, never opened it. I don't know if he was gifted it or what, but he just never opened it.
Yeah.
And so this stuff, I don't know if my mom's heard this story. So mom, forgive me for this and dad. But uh, we Mike's like, Katie wants to kind of mess with it. And I was like, bro, I don't think you should, man. And he's like, well, I told Katie. this is Michael. He's like, I told Katie I'm not going to touch it unless you're here. And Mike's like, he's like, you have to be here. He's like, that's the only way I'd ever touch one. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, I was like, I plan on being there tonight anyways because that's where I was going to stay for the weekend. So I was like, let's do it. I was like, whatever, man, let's do it. Now, at that time, I'm still very big on my faith, but I'm also thinking like, are Ouija boards real? Like for real, really?
Right.
Um, I mean, I did believe in them, but I wasn't sure how real they were. I guess it was like skepticism. And so we end up I end up showing up at Michael's place. We have dinner, we talk, and we wait until, they put his kid to bed. At that time, Lily was his daughter. She was probably like, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months. She was a baby. And they open it up, and it's old. It's real old. I mean, I never seen one like that before. We looked it up and stuff like that, and I don't know how accurate this was, and I'm not doing this to emphasize the story to make it more dramatic. But what we found about this one, this style was originated, according to the research we found, was originated in Salem. So I don't know if that's real. I don't know if that's true. That's just what we found in the research. So we're like, well, let's mess with it. And so Michael and Katie are sitting there. They're have their hands on it, they're touching it, whatever. No, I also want to say, guys, when I talk about this, I'm not talking about this to glorify Ouija boards or anything or say, hey, this is cool to play with it. I'm just doing it from my experience so you see how real this stuff is. So please, don't let your kids play with these things. They are very much real. Now, forgive me if I get a little shaken up because it is real. So Michael and Katie were touching it. It wasn't really moving. And so I'm like, I'm sitting there watching, and I get this feeling in my gut. And I'm like, man, I just don't know. And Mike's like, let's just, ask it a couple of questions, see if it moves. I was like, okay. I was like, so I haven't touched it. I'm just standing there. And Mike's like, you know, is anybody there? This is typical stuff that you would ask him. And sure enough, it starts moving a little bit, like very, very small at first, like like wanting to move but doesn't move. And then finally, Michael asked a question, and the question that I ask is what resonates with me. And because keep in mind, this too, Michael has Darren is our oldest brother. He's biological. It goes Darren, Michael, and me. The three of us have the same mom, same dad, biologically. Michael and I were adopted to my parents. Darren was adopted to another family. So we grew up without Darren.
Right.
So we have Darren, there's me, and there's Cody. And Michael asked a question. He's like, "What's my brother's name?" And it spells Daniel. And Michael looks at me, and I'm thinking, dude, you're just messing with me. What? Of course you say my name.
Right.
And and then Mike's like, "Well, who's my favorite brother?" And it spells my name again. And Michael's like, I was like, Mike, I was like, "Oh, are you guys messing with me?" I look at Katie. I was like, "Hey, you guys messing with me?" And Katie's like, "No, John is really moving." And Mike's like, "What's his birthday?" And it goes to my birthday. And so I'm like. And I was like, all right, Mike, whatever, dude, if you're being real with it. And he starts asking the questions, whatever. And it gets to a point where he gets a little uncomfortable. So he's like, I don't want to touch it right now. So he stops touching it. And Mike's like, Danny, you want to see if it moves for you? And I was like, okay. I was like, so I said, we have it on like not a coffee table, but like a a kind of table that's kind of small where it fits it. But so I get down on my knees and before I even touch it, that little thing goes woo, 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 all over the board.
Man.
And I told Mike, nope, I ain't touching that, bro. I was like, I didn't even touch it and the thing's moving. I was like, I ain't touching it. And so Michael ends up, touching, they get back on it. And this is when it gets a little dark. So Michael, he's moving it. Him and Katie are they're on it. And Michael asked it. He's like, what's your name? And so it goes. And at that time, there's a big Ouija board fetish where people were really playing with it before the movie came out. And it had a certain name, that everybody would talk about. Oh, if you get this name, it's really bad, whatever. Well, it did that name. And it starts with a Z. Now, here's the thing is we're thinking, well, it's just, that's the most common name right now. So to us, it didn't really bother us that it did that name, the name that it did. And Michael, I said, "Are you good?" And he said, "No." And Michael's like, "Where are you from?" And he's like, "Hell, yeah, no, no joke." And this is when it gets dark. Michael's like, well, what do you want? And it spells YOU. Michael's like, you can't have me. And then it doesn't move. And Michael's like, you can't have me. And it still doesn't move. And Michael looks at me. And so I said, you can't have him. And as soon as I spoke, it moves to yes. And I was like, no, you cannot have my brother. And it says, fine. And Michael looks at me and it says, since you, and Michael's like, so what do you need? What do you really want? And basically it says, because it can't have Michael, it says, I want your daughter.
Oh no, man.
And Michael's like, you can't have my daughter. And that's when I jump in. I was like, Michael, let me have it. So I touch it and it's just me on it. And I have my hands on it. And I'm like, you can't have Lily. And it's moving and, talking with me. And I'm like, how many are there? And he's like, 7. And I said, Michael, I'm gonna pray over this thing. I was like, because it's not having Lily. And so I told her, I was like, you can't have my niece. And I was like, in the name of God, basically I pray over it. And I was like, you have no power here. And it shuts down. And so I look at Michael, I said, Michael, you put this thing up, you put it away, you don't touch it. And he's like, okay. And I was like, don't touch it, bro. And he's like, okay. And he's older than me. But usually I'm the one that makes the decisions and stuff. And so I said, no, I said, Mike, I'm telling you, Mike, do not touch this thing. And when they're putting it up, I'm looking in the mirror and I see the demon appear. And he's looking back at me in the mirror. And I'm looking at him, he's looking at me. And I shake my head. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, you do not have power here. And he did his little finger over the lips and smiles at me, and he ends up disappearing. And later that night, I end up going to bed. And I told Michael, I emphasized, Mike, do not play with this thing. And the next morning, I wake up and he has it out, him and Katie. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, man, I got to see something. And I was like, you playing with fire, bro.
Yeah, man.
And this is the part that's kind of freaky. This is how I'm telling you that this stuff's real. Michael's playing with it again, and it tells Michael that since they can't have Lily, and they're coming for him, and Michael's like, you can't have me. And they told Michael, the Ouija board tells Michael that you are going to get in a severe accident. And Mike's like, what? And he's like, you are going to get a severe accident, and basically we're coming for you, is what it was saying. And Michael says, Dan, will you sit down, close it, close it, close it. So I go and I pray over it, and I end up closing that. I tell Michael, I said, Mike, don't. He's like, we got to get rid of this board. And I call my uncle, and me and my uncle were very close. Well, we were before he passed away. My uncle Gary, he was a huge believer in the faith for many years, and actually, he got to the point where God was using him to cast demons out.
Amen.
And so when he would go and he would, he wanted to know more about the demonic world so that way he could fight it better. And what happened is the devil sucked him in.
Mm.
So my uncle actually got real big, into the occult and to witchcraft and knowing all that stuff. And so anytime anything happened to me, I would always call my uncle, and he would be the one I'd be, hey, uncle, what this is happening? What's going on with this? Or I'd get advice from him, or if I just needed somebody to talk to about this stuff, my uncle would be the one. And so I called my uncle and I said, Uncle, this is what happened. What do we do? And he said, Danny, whatever you do, don't burn that. He said, you need to take it into the yard and you need to bury it. He said, because if you burn it, whatever's in that, you release.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he said, and whatever you release, whatever it told you will come happen. Well, I wasn't able to get a hold of my uncle until about a couple of days later. Turns out it scared Michael so much that him and his not stepdad, but his father-in-law went and burnt it. And Mike said that when they burnt it, it was freaky, of course. And Mike said there was a lot of stuff that would happen on the house, like toys would start playing, toys would start moving. And he's like, needs Daniel, it's like it's worse. And I told him, I said, Mike, when you burnt it, you released it. And Michael had sent a picture to me one day, and he's like, dude, there's something watching me in the woods behind the house. And he took a picture of the woods and he sent it to me. And I sent it to my uncle. And my uncle's like, he's like, let me see that picture. And I sent it to him. And he's like, Daniel, do you see that in the woods? And he circles it. And he sends it back to me. And sure enough, man, there's a dog sitting. There's two dogs, one on each corner of the picture, basically, on the
Mm-mm.
foundations of the property. And my uncle says, Daniel, those are hellhounds. He said they're watching. They got summoned to that place.
Yeah.
He said there's dark entities there. He said next time you're there, you need to pray over that house. And so I was like, oh, I told Michael, I said, Mike, this I didn't want to scare him, but I told him like, Mike, there is something there. And I was like, there's something watching you now, man. And I was like, so if anything happens, call me and I will be there. And about 2 years later, I ended up moving to California for a little bit. And forgive me,
Man, you're good.
I get a phone call from my sister-in-law telling me that Michael was in a severe accident. He's come home from work and he was hit by a semi. And luckily, luckily, he's still with us.
Good
He's
Lord.
still alive and well. And there's a praise to that is when he was coming home, the semi ran a red light and it smashed into his car. And it was so loud and severe that the fire chief 5 miles down the road heard it.
Oh my goodness.
And he was the first to the scene. Now, Michael's car was totaled. And here's the crazy part is he did not have a seatbelt on. And I kid you not when I tell you this, Bo, Katie, his wife, called me and she's like, Daniel, will you come stay with us for a weekend so that way I could get some sleep? Because Michael, he had severe back surgery. And he was in so much pain that he basically had to have somebody be around him all the time. And Katie knew that if I was there, he wouldn't take it out on me as much as or if he did, I can handle it. So
Right.
I was like, okay, so I was there and I stayed with him. And when I tell you this, Bo, he told me, he's like, he started breaking down crying. He's like, Daniel, I didn't have my seatbelt on. He's like, but somebody held me in that seat. He said, somebody
Yeah.
held me in that seat. And he said, and he lifts up his shirt and he has an arm on his stomach. And so we know, the Lord protected him for sure.
Amen. Amen. Man, that gave me chills. That.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew.
And so that's the thing is though, is that Ouija board told him you're going to get in a bad accident. And sure enough, it
Yeah,
happened.
dude. It came for him.
Yeah, it came for him. It definitely came for him. And so I'm just like, Mike, don't play with this stuff no more. And so luckily, he never has. We've never touched with one before since then. And another story that I have is one of my close friends, KB. I used to tell him stuff about this all the time about, all the paranormal stuff that happened in my home. And at this time, I'm living in the house in Wellsville by myself. Michael and Katie had Lily. They live in St. Louis. My parents, they live in another town with my two younger siblings. Katie's married, and then Nicole is in college, or Nicole's in Wisconsin at the time. I'm sorry. So I'm living in this house by myself, and it's not a huge house, but it's a decent sized house. And I always can tell when something's going to happen. I just get this feeling. And KB had messaged me one night, or told me one night. He's like, "Hey man, anytime that you ever experience something, he's like, please let me know." He's like, "I want to be there with you." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I don't know if you really want to, but if you want to come down, I'll give you a call." And he lived 30 minutes from me because he lived in Mexico, Missouri, and I lived in Wellsville, so it was about a 30-minute drive. Well, I get home from work, and it was a summer day and it was cold in my place. And I'm like, dude, why is it so cold in here? So I knew something was gonna happen. So in the house, and when you go down the hallway to the right, you go all the way down to the end of the hallway is the bathroom. To the T section goes to the right side is my bedroom where I stayed. And then the left side was where the girls used to stay and whatnot. And so I'm sleeping in my bedroom is at the end of the hall. And I just know something's gonna happen at night. And so I'm sitting there on my bed watching TV and I hear something. Now this is something that kind of freaks me out. It freaked me out pretty good. And I heard people walking down the hallway. And I know I'm home alone. And you know how you can see at the bottom of the doors, you can see the light.
Yeah.
You can see the shadows pass over the light. And so I called my boss at the time. Her name's Kara. She was my boss there, and I called Kara and I said, Kara, stay on the phone with me. I said, somebody's in my house. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, did you call the cops? I was like, no, it ain't like that. I was like, there's my presence here. She knew because I used to tell her some stories and stuff. And so she's like, okay, but she's like, okay, man, you're good. And she's like, just talk to me. What's going on? And I was like, they're outside my door right now. And she's like, are you for real? And I was like, yeah, I can see their shadows underneath the wall, underneath the door. And as soon as I say that, you can see the door handle start to move. I already locked it because I knew that there's something there. And then you see the door handle start to move and the door start to shake that they're trying to get in. And I could hear them. I could literally hear them speaking, but it's not English. It's a demonic language. I couldn't even tell you if I heard it again, I would know, but I don't know what they say. But I could hear them speaking to each other. There's three of them because they each have a different tone. And so I tell Kara, I said, Kara, to stay on the phone with me, please, until it's gone. And she's like, okay. Ends up leaving. I end up calling KB. And I said, KB, I was like, bro, if you want to come to the night, this is the night to do it. And he's like, oh, I'm coming, man. I'm coming. So he gets in his car and he drives 30 minutes to come hang out with me. While he's gone, when he's on his way, I go into the bathroom to wash my face and kind of like recuperate from everything. And I'm like, trying to, find my center. And when I'm in the bathroom while washing my face, I hear them again, and the door starts to open to the bathroom. And I take the handle and I slam it shut and I lock the door and I hold it with my shoulder. And I'm a pretty decent sized dude. I'm 6'2", about 240 pounds. And I'm leaning against the door and I could hear them talking and they're trying to open the door. It's rattling, it's shaking.
My
And,
gosh.
and then it switches to English and he's like, he's in the bathroom. Basically, there was them telling me that they know I'm there,
Yeah.
that they're letting me know that I know that they're there. And that door starts to shake for about 2 minutes. I'm holding the door and I'm holding it and I'm using all my body weight to keep the door shut. And it finally stops. And KB texts me. He's like, I'll be there in 5 minutes, whatever. And so I'm telling myself, I was like, I'm not going to tell KB anything that's happened. I was like, I'm just going to experience it. Because here's the thing is, if I tell him, he's going to be on edge. He's going to be looking for things. So I was like, but if I don't tell him anything, and it's going to be more real to him.
Yeah.
And so I meet him outside. KB smokes. I do not. Or he did at the time. I met him outside and he lights up a cigarette and we're talking and keep in mind it's summertime, so it's warm outside. And I do have the AC on, but I have it set like 72, 70, a nice medium. It's probably like 50 degrees in that place.
Mm.
And so I don't say anything to him. I want him to experience the cold when he walks in. And sure enough, he walks in. The first thing he says, he's like, dang, bro, it's cold in here. I was like, yeah. I was like, go look at my thermostat though. I don't have it set like that. And so we go into the kitchen. In on the kitchen stove, my mom and dad would have a timer. And this timer, would be like a cooking timer. And so we were sitting on the kitchen. I was sitting on the sink. He's leaned up against the wall, and we were just talking. And I'm just telling, talk about the day. And he's like, so, he's like, how are you? I was like, bro, I'm a little shaken up. I was like, some stuff been happening. I didn't go into detail, but I was like, it's just been a crazy night already. And it's only like 9 o'clock. And I was like, some stuff's gonna go down for sure tonight, if just so you're aware. And so I could tell he's getting a little antsy. So I was like, you want to go smoke real quick? And he's like, yeah. So I was like, we start to go outside, and that timer flies across the room, and it goes by his head, and it
Mm.
hits the wall, and it falls to the floor. And he's like, what? And he's like, he looked at me. I was like, I didn't throw that at you, man. And he goes down, and he picks it up, and on the timer, and I kid you not, it says 3 6s.
Oh my gosh.
So he gets scared by that. He hits the button, turns it, puts it back to zero, gives it to me, and I stick it on the fridge because it's magnetic. And I was like, I'm gonna keep it here. I was like, that way there's no excuse for it to fall, whatever.
Right.
Um, so we even messed with it a little bit to see how magnetized it was, and it wasn't budging. And so we go outside, he smokes. We come back in. I was like, hey man, you want to watch some TV, kind of get, get off the edge? And he's like, yeah. So we go into my bedroom, we turn on Sons of Anarchy, and we were watching that. And about halfway through the show, KB starts hitting me. He's like, bro, bro, I hear something. And I was like, what? He's like, I hear something. So I pause the TV, and sure enough, you hear something moving. And do you remember that story I told you about the chair moving on the table?
Yeah.
So that's what he's like. It sounds like a chair on the tile. And so we get up and go out into the
Mhm.
kitchen. And sure enough, I kid you not, bro. I kid you not. The chair was pulled out from the table and it was stuck in the sitting in the middle of the kitchen. And in the middle of the chair was that timer. And the timer had
No way.
666 on it again. And KB's like, what? He's like, what up? He's like, what? And I was like, I don't know, bro. Let's just put it back. I said, let's, it is what it is. So we take the timer, we put it back, put the chair back. And we sit there and we just stare at everything. We're looking at each other and like, what? And so like little things happen throughout the night, right? Well, I have to wake up the next morning because I have to go to work. I have to work the next morning. And back then, Taco Bell didn't open really early because we didn't have breakfast. It opened at 10, so we had to, be there at 9. And so I wake up, I end up going to bed. KB pulls out like a sleeping bag or blankets, whatever, and he's in the corner. And so how it was my bed was against the wall. There's a window above my bed that we would have to sneak into sometimes if we end up locking the door and can't get in, whatever. And my TV was at the foot of my bed. And then KB was in the corner. And the next morning I wake up, KB's laying there just staring at me. But just staring at me. And I'm like, I look at him, I was like, you all right? He doesn't say nothing. I go and brush my teeth, you know, get ready for the morning, get changed. He's still laying there. And then when he sees him start get ready to change, he starts getting up, putting the, folding the blankets up, whatever. And he puts him on my bed. KB doesn't say one word to me. I say, hey man, I say, you good? He doesn't say one word. We end up leaving the house. He leaves before me. I'm behind him. I follow him all the way to Mexico. KB and I don't talk for 3 months.
Oh my gosh, man.
Um, and I end up moving, and I end up moving to with Nicole at that time. And so I end up calling him one day because I just missed him. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and I was like, "Hey, man," he's like, "It's been like 3 months since we talked." I was like, "What happened, bro? What happened that day?" And he's like, "I don't want to talk about it, man." I was like, "No." Well, I was like, "Come on, man." I was like, "It's been 3 months, 4 months." I was like, "What happened that
Yeah.
night?" And he's like, Daniel, he's like, "I believe you. I believe everything you ever said." He's like, "Because that night when you were sleeping," he said, "I saw him." He said, "He came out of the shadows and he stood over your bed, bro. And he just stood over you the whole night when you slept." And he said, and he turned and he looked at me and he saw me in the corner. He looked at me and he put his finger up to his lip and he blew on it and he shook his head, telling me not to say nothing. And
Mhm.
he said he was there the whole night. He said, "You know what scares me?" And I was like, "What?" I never saw him leave. And so to this day, same thing. KB's the same way, man. If I text KB or I say, "Hey KB, guess what happened?" Nope, don't want to hear it.
Don't want nothing to do with it.
Don't see it, don't want to hear it, don't want to be about it. He said it's real. And so like, just like things like that, it's crazy. How much you still got time?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Okay. Another story I have is when I was doing that Sports Crusader stuff. One year when I was the inner city, like the head of the inner city, not the coordinator yet. I was just the head captain. I was talking to this girl. She was on another team. Her name was Kaylee. Very, very sweet, very godly woman. Just nothing bad to say about this woman. She's just phenomenal. And we just really hit it off and really liked each other. And after the summer, she lived in Texas. I think close to Dallas. It was a city outside of Dallas, I believe. I can't remember the name of it because we were 24, 25 at the time. And I lived in Missouri still. She actually took a Greyhound all the way from Texas to St. Louis, and I picked her up in St. Louis, and she stayed with my family for a week, and myself, and because we were getting pretty serious, we really liked each other, and we were thinking, could this be the one, we really did like each other. And Della really just tore that one up. And what I mean by that is probably the third night we were downstairs in the basement. My parents were living in Curryville at the time, and they had the basement. They had a big old sectional couch that was
Right.
downstairs. It was really, really nice. And we sat on one side and you could prop your feet up, and I did that. And we decided to watch a movie. And I was like, "What movie do you want to watch?" And let's watch Paranormal Activity. I was like, "All right, cool." It don't, that scary movies don't really bother me too much because I felt like I live it. So I was
Yeah,
like,
you live it. That's what
yeah.
I
So I
can
was
do, man.
like, so I was like, yeah, we can watch it. So we end up watching it. She's curled up in my arms, and she ends up falling asleep. Now this is when it gets a little weird. Um, I'm just holding her, and I'm watching the movie. She falls asleep, and all of a sudden she wakes up. She says, "Hit me," just hitting my chest, just going to town on me. And I'm like, I hug her, and I was like, Kaylee, it's me, it's Daniel, this is me. And I like, when she wakes up, finally she's screaming, she's hit me. And finally, when she wakes up, she sees it's me, and she just starts crying. And I just hold her, and I was like, what's wrong? I just had a bad dream. I was like, okay. I was like, you're good. I was like, no big deal. So I just hold her, and she cries, and that was it. I was like, no, no big deal. Bad dreams happen. Well, I didn't want her to take a Greyhound all the way back to Texas, so I ended up driving her to Texas. It's probably, I think it was like an 8.5 hour drive or something like that. So I had the week off, and I was like, I'm gonna go spend a week with her and her mom, and her sister. And so we drive down there. And this still gives me goosebumps to this day. We stop at a gas station. We get a bunch of snacks, for the road trip and whatever. She gets some Twizzlers and some chips, and I get some soda and whatever, some beef jerky, and we're driving. And the drive from Missouri to Texas is kind of boring, to be honest with you. So we're just talking, and when somebody really has something serious they want to ask you, they get like tensed up and they get in a certain position, and it's going to be an important question. She does that. She gets into the position where her back is almost against the door or the window, and she's like facing where she could face me. And she's like, "Hey, I got a question." And I'm like, it just caught me off guard because we're just in casual flow of a conversation, and then she just gets serious on me for a second. And I was like, okay, this ought to be good. And she drops a bombshell on me. She's like, who is? And she says his name.
No way.
I never once spoke to her about him. Never once brought him up. We never once have a conversation about him. When you see those movies, you guys driving and they hit a bombshell and they just hit the brakes and they just,
Yeah.
that's what it was like to me. I didn't hit the brakes for going on the highway, but she's clear as day, serious as can be, dropped his name. She's like, who is he? And I looked at her and I was like, how do you know that name? And then me saying that, she knew it was real. And she's like, because Daniel, the night we were watching the movie and I fell asleep, she said, in my dream, you were holding me, but then all of a sudden it wasn't you. And she described him, Bo, to the T. She said it was a figure with a white face, no eyes, like just black sockets, basically.
Yeah.
And she said his hair was shaggy and long and black. And she said, and he was squeezing the life out of me. And she said he kept saying his name over and over and over. And he's like, basically, she said he was saying his name is ready to play. His name is ready to play. And she said over and over again. And
Oh no.
that's when I woke up and started hitting you because I thought it was him. And so she was so terrified of it. And I told her, I was like, okay. So she opened the door and I was like, all right, let me tell you a little bit about my life. So I started telling her about it, talking to her about it. And she was fascinated by it because it scared her. So, she said, Dale, we need to research this. And I kept telling her, I was like, Kaylee, you ain't gonna find nothing. I said, I've looked my whole life. I said, I've looked his name up. I've looked up different things about it, anything you could think of. And the best way I could describe what he looks like to somebody is, you ever seen the movie Sinister?
Yes.
That dude that
Yeah.
wants kids? He looks like that, bro.
Mm-mm.
Almost to the T. And so, like, I kept telling her, I said, the only thing that ever looks close to him is the movie Sinister. I was like, it's the closest thing to it, really, and that I've ever seen. And so we were, doing research, and so she would go into her stepdad's computer room, and we sit at the computer and we would look at stuff, and she would research it, and nothing, couldn't find nothing. And I told her, I said, Katie, you ain't gonna find nothing. I'm telling you. I was like, my uncle, who's big into this stuff, has been looking for stuff for me too, and he can't find nothing. And so we end up, and how it was, I stayed in the spare room, and she stayed in the room across, which was her bedroom. And keep in mind, we're very religious in the aspect to where we don't want to do anything before marriage or anything like that. But she would come into my room, and we would, lay in bed and talk or converse or whatever, cuddle and whatever. Nothing nasty. But one night she had came in, and we were just exhausted from the day because we had helped her stepdad clean out the whole garage and reorganize and throw away stuff, and it was just a busy day, and we ended up passing out. And this, I tell my mom loves this story. This is just one of her favorites. And Kaylee's in bed, she's sleeping, I'm sleeping. And the way that the room was, this is a big house, man. This is a nice house in Texas. My parents were never rich. We didn't come from money, and so this house was like a mansion to me. And this bedroom that we're in, there was a king size bed. It had the bedpost and all that stuff at the
Oh yeah.
end. It was just a nice room. And then the it was in the middle of the room, and around it was carpet, of course, because it's like, it's in the middle. And I'm sleeping. Kaylee wakes up, and she wakes me up. She's like, "Damn, there's something in here." She's like, "There's something in here." And she has no pets, no dogs, no cats, nothing. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "There's something in here." And I kid you not, I looked down, and I could see, first I heard them. I could hear something moving in the room. And I looked down, and you could see paw prints in the carpet, and you could see them move
What?
and move and move, and there was four of them. I know that because you could, and this is gonna sound weird to say, but you could feel the size of them. They were huge creatures, and I know 100% what they were.
Was hellhound.
Yes,
Oh my gosh.
there's four of them walking around the bed. And here's the thing is you could see their imprints, and their paws are huge, bro, on the carpet. And you could hear them breathing. They were howling. One, I was on the right side of the bed, she was on the left. One comes right up to my next to me, and I could feel it breathe on my face. And so I said, "Hey, um, I said, okay, let's pray. Let's pray." And so we start praying. And they end up leaving, but you could literally feel the presence of them in that room, and just to hear them and to smell them and just you couldn't see them physically, but you could see the imprints, and they were it was crazy, man. It's something I will never forget. And when I felt it breathe on my face, I was like, "Oh, this is next level stuff," you know.
Yeah, man.
Um,
Yeah.
so it was, yeah, it was an experience, and of course, with that happening, and then all these other crazy stuff that really happened. Kaylee and I, we just went our separate ways, and um, much love to her. She's doing good now, but it's just something that happened. Now this story I'm about to tell you is real. All of them have been real, but why I always tell people this is because some people may not believe this, but um, when people ask me about my faith and they say, "Hey, man, how do you know God's real?" I could tell you I know God's real. This is how I met a girl who was demon possessed. And the story with that is so when I was doing the Sports Crusaders, and I was an inner city. I was working for the inner city. I had a phenomenal team that year. Actually, we were hitting numbers that year. We were setting records for this organization. And at the end of the day, it's not about the records. Like realistically, my point is myself to just reach these kids this year. We were already because what it is we're at a location for a week. We get there on Monday. Salvation Day is Thursday. Friday is the last day of the week, and then we leave either Friday night or Saturday morning. It just depends on the location and where we're going. And we start Labor Day week. What is it? Memorial Day is at the beginning of the year, or is that the beginning of summer?
Yeah, Memorial Day.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
we start like a Memorial Day week, and then we end like the first, second week of August. It just depends on how many camps you have. So we try to hit 8 to 10 camps a week, or 8 to 10 camps a year or a summer. And so this summer, halfway through, we already have probably close to 100 kids saved. which
Wow.
is, yes, I mean, God was just really using us.
Phenomenal.
Yes, it was beautiful. And so, we were just really feeling, on cloud nine and just knowing that God has his hand on this inner city team. And until we went to a location um in St. James. And this location was basically for kids who were wards of the state who did a lot, either two things. One, they didn't have nobody,
Right.
and instead of going to foster care, they went to this place. And they were there till they're 18 and they could age out. Or these kids did some horrible stuff, and instead of going to juvie, you ever seen the movie Holes? Kind of like that, where instead of going to juvie, they could go to this place and they could get help. And these counselors would work with them and try to get them on, out of trouble and basically better their lives. And so this story is a little long, but it's good. It's powerful. So when we got to St. James, what we would do is the first thing we would do is meet the staff. Me and my team, we meet the staff, we introduce ourselves, they introduce us, they'd show us around the camps, whatever it was, wherever we were going to hold our camp, our basketball location, they would show us that. This one was different because each of these kids were in a certain home, like a building, a house. And each of the ages range from different. So like if they're like not elementary, but junior high kids, they would be aged together. If they're, high school kids, they're aged together and so forth. If they're kids that were not doing school, but they're working, they were aged together. And so there was probably like 10 houses of all these kids. And it was my basketball team. And we were lucky enough that year we were able to bring a volleyball team. And so when we were there, they brought us to each of these houses, and they brought the kids that lived in each house, and they brought them out, and we introduced ourselves and said, "Hey, my name is Daniel. I'm the head basketball lead. Um, you know, I've been doing this for this many years, blah blah." We introduced ourselves to the kids, and sometimes the kids would introduce themselves to us or whatnot. And we went into this one house. It was just girls, and these girls, and so how it was is we took the boys for basketball and the girls took the girls for volleyball. And the only reason why is because being that they're wards of the state and some of these kids were sexually abused, they could not be with the opposite sex like that.
Right.
So the girls focus on our female team, a volleyball team focus on the girls and we focus on the men. Or the boys, and that's like what we did. So that way there was no legalations and nothing would, bad. And so when we were doing that, but when we went to the houses, we were all together. So that way they could see, if you see this guy walking around, he's with the sports crusade, so forth. And we're in this house and meeting this group of girls, and they're probably 16 to 18 range.
If you can hear me, everything froze up. Hey, honestly, everything froze up. As soon as you said 16 to 18, everything
Yep.
everything just stopped. So it
This one Bo is I'm telling you, they don't want me to talk about this one because it did. It even stopped recording for a second and told me the recording stopped. I thought you left for a second.
no, I paused it because I didn't want there to be a big gap. I couldn't hear anything. Everything just shut down. So I just tried to pause it for a second. But
Yeah, it did. It definitely froze. Um, so yeah, 16 to 18. And it was not weird, it's different because none of the girls really spoke because a lot of these girls were, sexually abused, God forbid. And one of them, she raised her hand and she actually had a question. And it wasn't really a question, but it was directed towards me. And it was kind of cool because her name was Janie. My baby sister's name is Janie, but they're spelled different. So when she raised her hand, she's like, "Hey, you said you have a sister named Janie?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." And she's like, "My name is Janie." And I was like, "Oh, cool." So how do you spell it? And because you don't really hear the name Janie, Janie is not really a common name.
right,
And she's like, she spells it this way. And I was like, "Oh, very cool," And that's all she said. But I thought it was different because she's the only one that spoke up in the whole group. Well, that week when we're going through that week, it was just the devil was hitting hard. And I just knew, I said, there's something going on, man. There's something crazy. There's something here. And my right hand guy, his name is DeAndre. DeAndre is 6'5", black man, big dude from Houston. He lived in Chicago, played ball in Chicago, played ball with Michael Jordan's son. And yeah, he's just a phenomenal basketball player. And so he was my right hand, and we just talked and I was like, DeAndre, man, there's an oppression over this place. There's something here. And he's like, you feel it too? And I was like, I feel it, man. And it was just like the first day was crazy. Like the kids were bad. Like, I mean, we worked in the city before, like multiple times. East St. Louis kids and East St. Louis kids, man, at that time, they were, there's some rough kids. And then this place was just worse. It made East St. Louis. I'd rather be in East St. Louis all the time compared to this situation. And it was weird because the first day my phone gets disconnected. Like just gets disconnected. Like my phone bill's paid, but somehow AT&T had disconnected my phone.
Hmm.
And so I would use DeAndre's phone until I got mine. I text my brother, say, hey, Mike, my phone's disconnected right now. Don't know what's going on. AT&T's looking into it, blah, blah. So I told DeAndre, I said, the devil, man, he's attacking. He's trying to seclude us from our families. And so we're talking and we're praying and going throughout the week. Second day is a little easier. It's not as bad. The kids are starting to open up to us a little bit, so we get to play with them a little bit more and go and teach them drills and teach them some stuff. And so what we usually did with the younger kids, we would teach them basketball. We would teach them how to dribble, how to shoot. Different use your pivot, different things like that. With the older guys, we would actually play ball. Like they'd run up and down college kids, like college athletes. So it was fun to them. And even if we would, beat them pretty bad, they just loved it. So that's what we did. And they didn't want us to play easy, but they wanted us to actually play. So that's what we do. Wednesday comes around and we all stayed in the same house because they grouped us together. There's me, DeAndre, Jake, Kyle, and Joe. There's the five of us. And then the girls volleyball team, there was Tiffany, and she had three girls with her. And forgive me if I forget all their names, but we were all there together in this room. And the way that we did it is the girls would have the bedrooms, and us guys would just sleep in the living room. And well, when we got home that Wednesday night, it was real just heavy. We were tired, spiritually, mentally, and we were just really just troubled. It was a rough day. And the girls were talking to us, and I could hear them. Well, they were talking amongst themselves, and I could hear them. And I heard one of them say, "Hey, let's get Daniel." Um, I'm the senior there. Me and Tiffany, the lead of the volleyball team, but the two of us have been doing this longer than all of them. Some of these were first year recruits, some of them, 2 years. This is my year 6, and Tiffany's probably been there 3 years, I think, three or four. And she's like, let's go get Daniel. And so they come and get me, and I'm with the boys, and they said, hey, Daniel, we think something really dark is going on in our girl camp. And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, we think one of them has a demon. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, dude, she just doesn't act this, she acts weird. Like there's just something going on. You just feel a presence around her. And I'm like, huh. I was like, okay. I was like, who is it? And they tell me the girl's name, and it's not, it's some girl I never heard of. So I'm like, okay, tomorrow is Salvation Day. And they're like, and we're on fire right now. Like I said, we almost have 100 kids that we reached throughout the year or for that summer. And they're like, and I really, really wanted to be with the boys that day. And Tiffany's like, Daniel, will you please come with us to the girls during Salvation Day, during that time, and talk with this girl? And I was like, okay. I look at DeAndre, and DeAndre's like, are you good, man? And he's like, yeah. He's like, nah, we good. He's like, we'll hold it down for you. You go and you deal with, sit on with that. So
Right.
that's what we do. Forgive me. This was Tuesday night because this is when we go up there Wednesday. I apologize. We go up there Wednesday, because she does not show up for Salvation Day because they have a choice whether they could come to the camp or not. They're not required to be there. And so Wednesday I go up with Tiffany and the girls, and I'm sitting there, and I told Tiffany, I said, Tiffany, that's what we're gonna do. I'll be here for the whole camp. It's about 2 hours long. I said, and I used to play volleyball. I played volleyball in college. So I knew how to play. I knew how to do drills and stuff like that. But I was like, hey, I'm not going to play. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to watch. I said, tell me who it is. I'm going to observe her. And, if we'll talk to her down so during our halftime, which our halftime is when we sit there and we talk about God. We do a verse of the day, or we do a Bible study, and we have something each day we're supposed to specifically talk about. Ironically enough, that summer was about the armor of God.
Yeah.
And so each day we would do, a piece of armor. And so we would during halftime, I'm sitting, oh, well, before that, I'm sitting there, I'm watching, and I'm watching the young lady that they're talking about, and I'm not seeing anything, though. Nothing seems out of the ordinary to me. I don't feel nothing. And so I told him, I was like, during your halftime, I'll sit in with it. And I said, let's kind of seclude her a little bit so that way we can see if everything's okay. And so that's what we do. Me, Tiffany, and Lane, her name is Lane, um, was another not the camper, was another leader. So I did it to where it was me and two of the lead ladies with this young adult. So that way I was never alone.
Right.
And so we're sitting there and we're talking. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking to this girl. I was like, hey, what's your name? And she told me her name. I was like, I'm Daniel. I was like, I don't know if we met. And she's like, no, I seen you when you came through and whatever. I was like, yes. I was like, yep. So I'm the lead of the basketball. I introduced myself to her, and she's talking to me, and I was like, so what's going on? Talk to me. The girls are a little worried about you. They seem like you a little troubled, or are you okay? And she's like, yeah, she's like, I'm having a lot of nightmares. I was like, okay. I was like, what kind of nightmares? And she told me. And I was like, so why do you think you're having these nightmares? And she said that before we had got there in camp, she said like a week or 2 weeks before, they get free days, some days where they could go and venture out and do things. And she said one of their free days, her and some of the girls went and they found this house. Now, what she tells me, I don't know how true this is. This is what she has said. But she said we found this house, and she said there was a lot of writing in there, a lot of darkness in there. I was like, what do you mean? She like a lot of symbols I mean, I believe it because this was backcountry. I mean, this has been the woods, like this was secluded from civilization. I mean, this is far out there. Because these kids, they don't want these kids close to a lot of people. And so I believe that they found maybe an abandoned house or anything. But she's talking to me, she's telling me that they found this room in there and there was like a box, and in the box was dirt and bones. And
Hmm.
so can you hear me? I feel like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
froze
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. It looked like you froze up. And so I'm like, okay. I was like, well, what did you guys do with it? And I kid you not, as she says, well, we took the bone home. Well, what do you mean you took the bone home? And she's like, yeah, we thought it was kind of cool, so we end up taking the bone. And she said, as soon as we took the bone, some stuff's been happening. And when she said that, we're over on the right side of the gym. On the left side of the gym, Janie jumps up, starts screaming, top of her lungs, bloody murder, just starts screaming, starts hitting herself, and she takes off running. And I look at Tiffany, I was like, Tiffany, it's not her, it's her. And she's like, what do you, I said, it's not her, it's her. And we get up and we run after Janie. And she's outside and she's laying in the dirt, rolling around the dirt, hitting herself. And everybody's surrounding her, watching her scream and go nuts. And she starts saying stuff that you can't even understand. And I get down on my knee and I reach out and I touch her shoulder. And as soon as I touch her, she stops moving. And she looks at me and her eyes are kind of glazed over. And I was like, Janie, I was like, you're okay. And she stops and she starts bawling. And she's like, just so shaken up from what happened. And so I'm sitting there with her. I was like, Janie, you're okay. I'm comforting her. And she ends up, the counselor, like the head counselors come up. And of course, we're not supposed to be near them like that. So of course I step back and I tell the lady what happened. And the lady's like, okay, well, she's going back to the room. And I was like, okay. I said, I understand. I said, I respect that. So they take Janie, they take her away. Um, we're shaken up. Tiffany's devastated. She's like, I thought it was this girl. I was like, it's okay. I was like, it's okay. We go back into the room. And so we go back into our room, and that night we're talking and we're just so beat up, and just the devil's beating us and he's winning, and we just feel like he's winning and we're not reaching these kids. And um so I come up with an idea. Why don't we do something together as a core group to kind of regroup ourselves? And the girls came up with a good idea to do face mask. First time I ever done a face mask in my life. And but we did it, and we did a face mask, and it was, we had a good time. We were laughing about it, and we just got back on a chill level. And so that was how we spent that night. And I told Tiffany the next day, tomorrow's Salvation Day. I say, Tiffany, is if Janie shows up, because like I said, they don't have to be there. It's not required. I was like, if Janie shows up, come get me. And she's like, okay. And so we go to Salvation Day. Um, and we were with the boys and up at the hill and the basketball camp, and me and DeAndre and Kyle, and we're doing, our inner city stuff, and it gets to the part where salvation, halftime, talk about the salvation, leading, about the plan of salvation, leading them to Christ, and we end up praying, doing our Salvation Day. They never come get me. Jay never shows up, and so I'm like, I'm a little devastated by it. None of the kids accept Christ. And we're just, we're beat because we were on fire all summer and leading kids to Christ, and nothing that day. And Jane never showed up. So we were just real beat up. And we go back to the place, and we're all talking. I was like, this is what we're doing. I was like, this is what we're doing. I was like, tonight we're going to walk over every house, and we're praying over every house. I was like, because here's the thing, even if we didn't lead anybody to Christ this week, we planted the seed. And I was like, we're going to pray over these kids. We're going to pray over the counselors. We're going to pray over every single house. And there's 10 houses. So that's what we did. We walked every house. And at every house, we got in a circle, we held hands, and each one of us would pray over a certain house. And we would, Lord, protect these kids, guide them, watch over them, love them, whatever you could think of. And that's what we're praying for these kids. To get to Janie's was about 10 minutes down the road. And so we were thinking about, do we want to go there? And I was like, guys, we got to go to Janie's. We got to go to that house. And so we get in a truck, and we, some of us are in the bed of the truck, and we drive down it, and we go to the house. And when we get there, it's dark. It's like 2 a.m. We should have been asleep by then, but I was just telling the guys, I have a sense of urgency in my heart. We got to pray over this house.
Right.
And when we're standing out there, you could feel a presence, man. You could just feel darkness. It was dark. It was pitch black, but the woods, the woods are just dark in itself, but you could just feel a presence. And we held hands, and we waited. Nobody prayed. Nobody knew what to say.
Wow.
And I waited for somebody to say something, and nobody did. So finally I prayed. And I was like, I prayed. It was one of the longer prayers that I've ever done. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I knew, I said, God, there's something over this camp. I said, there's something over this house. I was like, lift the darkness. I was like, be with these kids, let us be a witness to them, whatever the case was. So we prayed over that house, and we went back. And I told Tiffany the next morning, I said, Tiffany, not if. I said, but when Janie shows up today, you come get me. And she's like, how do you know I said, I know she's gonna be there. When she shows up, you come get me. And Tiffany's like, okay, yes, sir. We're up in the top of the camp, me and DeAndre and the boys, and we're running up. It was a good Friday. These kids already warmed up to us. We're running up and down the court, having a good time, just laughing. Tiffany comes running up the hill. Daniel, you gotta come. Janie's here. You gotta come. And I was like, okay. I look at DeAndre, and he's like, praying for you, dog. I'm praying for you. And I gave him a hug, took my Bible, went down the hill. Sorry, this one gets me emotional because it's powerful. Me and Tiffany, I said, Tiffany, we're doing this alone. We're doing this together, me and you, nobody else. And she's like, okay. And we take Janie. I said, well, first off, I go up to her, and keep in mind, this is a 2-hour camp. And we're not even at halftime yet. And so, and halftime obviously is halfway through the camp. And I said, I go up to Janie with Tiffany. I was like, Janie, I was like, you remember me? And she's like, yeah. I was like, do you mind if I steal you away? And I was like, don't worry, we won't be alone. I was like, Tiffany's gonna come. I was like, but do you mind if I steal you away? And she's like, yeah, okay. So we go, and we go up on this. You go onto the stage, and behind the stage, there was a room, not a dressing room. It was just a hallway. It was kind of weird. It's a hallway with a drinking fountain. And we go in the hallway. We leave the door open because there's the three of us. Janie sits on the side of the fountain. I sit across from her, and it's narrow, bro. It's like she's here. She's against the wall. I'm here. I'm against the wall. Tiffany sitting next to her. The drinking fountain's right here. And we start talking. And I'm talking to Jane. I said, Jane, tell me a little bit about yourself. And so she starts talking to me about how, her childhood was really bad, all the stuff that happened to her poor girl. And she just pouring her soul out to us. And I knew there was something over her. Like I could feel it. I could feel the darkness. I could feel the evil. And I looked at her. I was like, Janie, are you okay? And she's like, no. And she told me the exact same story as that other young girl about they went to that house, they found the bones. And so she said, we took these bones. And she's like, Daniel, I have a book. And she's like, and I know I'm not supposed to have it, but I have it and I read it and it's really dark. And I was like, what kind of book do you have? And she's like, it's called the Book of Shadows. And it's about like just a bunch of dark stuff, demonic. My uncle knew what it was about,
Yeah.
being, knowing that stuff. And just a book of demons, basically, just dark stuff. And she's like, Daniel, I feel something. And I was like, what? I was like, well, I knew what she was getting at, but I wanted her to tell me. I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, I feel something in me. And I was like, okay. I was like, what do you feel? She's like, I was like, what is it? She's like, it's not just one. And I look at Tiffany and I look at Janie and I was like, what do you mean? She's like, there's three of them. And it's kind of funny to me or ironic because remember at my house, there was three down the hallway.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. And I was like, how long they been in you? I just straight up asked her. She's like, for a long time. And I was like, okay. So I looked at her. I was like, do you see them in the mirror? And she's like, you could tell I hit a nerve because she couldn't believe I knew to ask that. I was like, do you see them in the mirror? And she's like, didn't even speak. She shook her head, yes. I was like, do you see them in your dreams? And she's like, yes. And I was like, do they write on the mirror? Like every question I would ask her was a yes. And she was amazed that I knew, this stuff. And I said, okay. I was like, what do you want to do about it? And she said, I want them gone. And
Mhm.
I was like, what's kind of cool is that you have, I said, this is what's cool to me is that you say you have a book of shadows. I was like, I have a book that's more powerful than that. And she looked at me. She was like, what do you mean? I held up my Bible. I said, this is more powerful than the book of shadows. I
Yeah,
said,
man.
this is real. And she kind of smiled at me and she's like, I do want them gone. And this is when it gets crazy. This lady comes through the door. Never seen her before in my whole life. Been there all week. Never seen her once. I look at Tiffany. Tiffany looks at me. We didn't know who this woman was. She obviously knew Janie, or Janie knew who was in that woman. But this lady walks up to the fountain, leans against it, looks down at Janie, doesn't even look at me or Tiffany, looks right at Janie, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And Janie's like, "Talking to these guys." And the lady's like, "Why?" And Janie's like, "Because I wanted to talk to him." And the lady's like, "Are you okay?" And Janie's like, "Yeah." And then her voice said it again. She's like, "Are you okay?" And this time Janie froze. And I could tell something was wrong because the way Janie was looking at her, she looked like she saw a ghost, basically. She tensed up. Like, her face started to lose the color in it. And she just really tensed up. And I was like, Janie. And Janie looked at me. I was like, are they here right now? And she's like, she nods her head, yes. And I was like, well, they could leave then. And when I said that, the lady looks at me. I look at her. And I was like, you could leave. And she looks at me and she's, kid you not, you ever seen Supernatural?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
Okay. When they see a demon, the eyes turn pure black?
Yeah.
That's real.
Oh my gosh.
This lady looks at me, her eyes turn pure black, all of it, pure black. She doesn't look at Tiffany. She doesn't look at Jane. She's just looking fixated on me. And she's like, and her voice changed. There wasn't a woman. And she's like, boy, we know who you are. And I don't say anything. I just look at him. And it says, we know who you are
Mm.
and we know what you're going to do. And they said, we know it will not work. And they said, and I just stared at them, didn't say nothing, just stared at them. And then they could tell they weren't intimidating me. And they switched it up basically. And they said, if you do this, we will come for you. And then the lady snapped out of it. She looked at us, had a big old smile on her face. She tilts her head to the side and she's like, have a great day.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she walks out. And I look at Janie and I look at Tiffany. I was like, now it has to be right now. And I said, we have to do it right now. And I look at Janie and I said, Janie, do you mind if I hold your hands? And she's like, okay. And I said, Janie, you have to believe this. You have to want this because if you don't, they will come back. And I said, you have to believe it. And I said, I'm here with you. I said, I'm not going nowhere. And she's like, okay. And I was like, just if you want this, tell me you want this. And I promise you, I will pray them out of you. And I said, I promise you, God will protect you. And she's like, I want it. I don't want them no more. And I looked at Tiffany. I said, Tiffany, I've never
Mm.
done this before. I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I said, only thing I'm asking is that you pray over me. And she's like, I got you. And so I'm holding Tiffany. I'm holding Janie's hands. I'm standing over her. She's kneeling down. She's sitting down. Tiffany has her hands on me. She's praying over me and I'm praying over Janie. And when I tell you, you could feel the presence of God that day. That's how I know God's real.
Too bad.
Because when I was praying, I had asked her, I said, what are these? And he said, what are their names? And she had told me their names and I prayed over her and I said each of their name one by one. And I cast, not me, because it wasn't me, it was God. Give all the glory to God.
Amen.
But me being the verbal, I was saying their name, saying, you have no power over here. Be gone. And I kid you not, Bo, I could feel them go from her hands into mine.
Mm.
I could feel the demon crawl up my arm, and I could feel it go all the way up to my neck, and I could feel God rip it off of me.
Thank you, Lord.
And 3 times I felt it, and I felt each one of them leave her, and I felt God protecting me, and you could literally feel good versus evil, darkness versus light.
Amen.
And when I'm praying over this young lady, and they end up leaving, and God used me to cast them away from her, Bo, I could not speak, I could not stand. I could barely breathe. I'm laying there in the middle of the hallway against that wall, holding my chest, just trying to breathe because the power of God was so surreal that I could not move.
Amen.
And I always give glory to this because I did not lead that young woman to Christ that day. Tiffany did. Tiffany was able to pray with her, the salvation prayer with her, and she accepted Christ that day.
Thank God.
I
That's so wonderful.
to be real, I wish I could say it was me that did it, that was able to lead her to Christ, but I wasn't. I couldn't speak, man. God, God just, I've only felt the Holy Spirit like that 3 times in my life. The first time was when I was saved. Second time was when I, prayed over her. And the third time is in that dream that I have that's recurring.
Mm.
And in that dream, it's in the middle, I want to say the Middle East because it's like a desert surreal scene. And when I go, this little boy finds me and he leads me to this room. And in this room, there's hundreds of people. And in my dream, all of them are demon possessed. And God uses me to cast it out. And it was and I wake up every single time at the exact same time. And when I wake up, I feel the Holy Spirit over me. And I feel that it's a white light in that, it's like, I don't want to say cave, but it feels like a cave in that room.
Yeah.
I feel it. And there's the only 3 times I felt the Holy Spirit like that. But I told my mom about that dream. I told my mom about that day. And I was like, Mom, that's how I know God is real.
Amen. Absolutely.
Because I mean, you can't sit there and tell me he's not when you got something like that, or been in a situation like that.
Yeah, man.
And so after that, and you know how they said they're coming for me. After that, went years without anything, nothing, no presents, no nothing. And then it started to pick up again when I moved into this new place in Jeff when I was living there. Me and my little brother were living there. My older brother ended up staying with us for about 2 years. Him and his wife were going through some stuff, and so he ended up staying with us. And at that time, we would get his kids. And at that time, he had two, Lily, and then he had a son named Maverick. And the two of them would, you know, they come stay a week with us and they stay a week with their mom. And they loved staying at our place because, you know, it was like a getaway for them. And the thing that was kind of cool is, you know, I would always spoil them whenever they'd be there. But one thing is real is they would never go upstairs to my room. They told Michael, I said they're scared of it. They would never go up to my room unless I was home and unless I was up there. If I was not home, like if they wanted to get a shirt or something, their dad had to go up there with them, or their dad had to go get it. They
Mm.
refused to go up there. And then Michael would always text me like, "Hey, bro, there's something in your room, bro. I can hear it walking." And I do have dogs, but the thing is we would, whenever I'm at work and me and Cody were at work, because then we didn't have a backyard, we would put them in the kennels. So that way they, you know, that way when we're at work, they weren't tearing up things or, you know, go in the, you know, bathroom in the house or anything like that. So there wasn't the dogs that Michael would hear. But so many things that Michael would text me about was like, dude, I hear something, or hey man, something was here or something. You know, Michael, he's always been sensitive to it too, but not as bad as me because it always like, you know, focus on me more. But it really what really started to get it out again, like the stuff that happened again is when I decided to finish my book, my first one. Like I said, it is Christian based, and a lot of it has a lot of stories that I've dealt with in my life, or my, you know, people in my family spiritually, or warfare, whatever it was. You know, I used it to write my stories, and I just felt a real calling from God to get this book out. So I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I really feel like I need to finish my novel. I need to drop it, and this thing has been done for years, and I just never published it. And because well, one, it costs a lot of money to publish and do all that stuff. So I was like, you know, I didn't have the finances, or I didn't have the time, or whatever the excuse was. I just didn't have it, and I just felt like I really got to get this book out. And so my mom and my dad said, "Hey, we're gonna help you. You know, we're gonna help you. You know, do this." And so they did. But throughout the times when I was writing my book and editing it and finishing it, I kept feeling a lot of oppression, and because I know that God didn't want me to have this book out. I mean, not God, I'm sorry, the devil didn't want me to have this book out. I knew God did. And so I felt called to obedience to finish this novel.
Yes.
And so my uncle, the one that I was really close with, who, you know, I would be my comfort, or when I would talk about things to him, he passed away. And
I'm sorry, man.
oh yeah, and it's been rough for the family. It's my mom's younger brother, and they were very close, and so it's, you know, kind of a gap in a hole in the family for a while, and it still feels like it. You know, whenever something happens, I would always call him, and now I can't call him, so it's a little different. But one night I was sleeping, and kind of weird but kind of cool. My uncle visited me in a dream. I feel like. Whether he did or not did it, he was in my dream, and he's like, Daniel, it's time. And he's like, get your book out. And
Amen.
so I told my mom, and sent my book into publication, and got the ball rolling on it. And it takes a long time. It took 12 weeks for the assessment. And then after the assessment, because you can't have, you know, being a Christian novel, it can't have certain words in it. You can't even say hell in it. You know, stuff like that. And you can't say like stupid or dumb because you don't want to offend nobody. So they're very picky on these assessments. And so, and then after the 12 weeks of assessment, it went through 10 weeks of editing
Oh,
through
wow.
editor. Yeah. So, I mean, I sent the book in on June 17th, and it was published on December 17th. So it took 6 months. But in that 6 months, in all my years, I've never once had sleep paralysis until this, like about after I sent my book in for publication.
Wow.
I woke up one night. Both my dogs were on my bed. Obi's my boxer, Ruby's my husky. They're both purebred. Been with I had Obi since he was a baby. He's 4, and Ruby I rescued her. Actually, it's kind of crazy because in my novel, the main character Tatum has a husky or a Malamute, and because I've always loved huskies and Malamutes, and when I sent that book into publication, a week later, I come home from church and there's a husky outside my door. And I end up rescuing Ruby. She's 8. She's been with me for almost a year now. But they're both two were sleeping on my bed. And I wake up and I can't move. Nothing. I could only move my eyes. I could feel them laying on my legs. I could feel something laying on my waist. And I could feel something holding my head down. And I know without a doubt it was 3 demons holding me down. And when I kid you not, when I tell you this, this is real. And when I finally, I said Jesus, 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 and I kept saying Jesus' name over and over again. And that every time I say his name, the power of his name, I could feel the release of them on me. I could
Yep.
feel them start to let me go. Until finally I was able to move and they were gone. But when they were holding me down, the one that was on my head kept telling me, "Don't release your novel. Don't release your novel."
Mm.
Don't really. And so that's why I knew when I told my mom, I called my mom, I said, Mom, we're doing the right thing. I said, we're doing the right thing because I was like, the devil don't want me to do it.
That's it.
And so like just like little things like that is like, been happening more frequently. I've been having a lot of night terrors this last 6 months where I wake up screaming, bloody murder, and like just real loud, just takes me a second to snap out of it. Michael, he heard me a few times when he would visit. Cody's never really heard it because he's always, he'd be at work or something, or at that time he was on the 3rd floor, I was on the 2nd. So, luckily he wouldn't hear it or whatever. But one night I was laying in bed and fell asleep, and in my old room, it had a hallway that went down all the way to my walk-in closet. And Obi and Ruby, they sleep with me every night, and they were sleeping with me. And actually, that night was a Tuesday night. Because on Tuesday, Cody would close at his work, and I would have his 2 pit bulls with my 2 dogs. And so I'd have all 4 dogs in my room, and all 4 of them would jump on my bed and sleep with me. And that night, I had this little thing. It's like a fragrance thing that we put oil on it. It's just smoke. It makes your room smell good. It's been in the middle of my dresser, or I don't have this dresser anymore, but it was in the middle of my dresser for 2 years, never moves. I mean, I never fell off, nothing ever happened. The thing was kind of heavy too. And that night I was dozing off, starting to fall asleep. All 4 dogs are in my bed, and I hear this loud crash. I thought maybe one of the dogs had done something, so I jump up. I was like, what? And it's just me home alone. I go and turn on the light, and sure enough, this fragrance thing is in the middle of my floor, just laying there.
Mm.
And I was like, well, man, the dogs didn't do it because there's no way they could have done it. So I put it back, and I text my mom, tell her what happened, and end up going to sleep. Well, that night, I go to sleep. Next day, I go to work. I'm at work all day. Come home, decide to take a shower, and I take a shower, and I feel this burn on my arm, and I'm like, what? And I look down, and I have 3 scratches on my arm. The pictures I sent you,
Yeah, it's the pictures you sent.
yeah, and so and that's not the first time I've been marked, and that's why I knew. And when the dog scratches you, they always get you with their middle claw, so you get
Right.
a long scratch down your body.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have cats. I don't have, and there's nothing. I keep my nails real short because I have to with my job,
All right.
and so like it wasn't me that did it, but I
Mm.
woke up and I didn't even know until I got in the shower and I felt the burn, and I looked down and sure enough, I had 3 scratches on my arm, and every time I've been marked, it's always 3 scratches, different spots, and so I said to my mom, I said, Mom, they're mad, man. I said, I know they're mad that I'm stepping out on my faith and trying to be a witness and really getting my book out there, and uh and then like probably 2 weeks later, I'm in my room that night falling asleep, and I wake up and Michael's downstairs. He's sleeping. He came down to visit for the weekend, and I'm sitting laying in my bed, and I feel something staring at me, man. So I wake up. It's like 3:05 in the morning. And I look down my hallway and I could see something standing there. And I'm like, halfway, am I sleeping? So I kind of get up, rub my eyes a little bit, reach down, grab my glasses, kind of like staring down out there. And I see it standing there staring at me. And all of a sudden it moves between the two dressers. Michael's dressers in my room because he didn't officially live with me, but he did. So we had a dresser where he kept his clothes in. And then the other dresser was there, and he was between the dressers, and he crouches down,
Mm.
like his hands on the ground and his feet there, whatever, like kind of crouched like a gargoyle, like would. And I'm like, what is that? And I'm looking. I leaned off my bed a little bit to look closer, and as soon as I did that, he jumps. It runs right at me, and it's him. And his white face is right there. And I start screaming bloody murder because I'm like, I know I'm like like I feel like I'm half asleep, but I'm not because
Right.
it's real. It's real. And I know it's real because Obi, my boxer, wakes up, sees him, gets between me and it, and he starts barking and growling and snipping at it. And he backs up into the shadows and he goes like this again with his finger over the lips and starts laughing and disappears in the shadows. And then we end up moving to a new place, and I pray over the place, and the new place we've been staying at, we were there about 4.5, 5 weeks. Nothing happens. My mom says, hey, nothing happened in your house, in your new place. I was like, no, mom. I was like, it's been good. I said, no nightmares, no bad dreams, nothing. I was like, it's been real good actually. And then one Saturday night before I go to church, the next day, this is the first Sunday I went back to church in about 4 or 5 weeks since we moved because of work. And I work Sundays sometimes. And it's just a crazy, crazy time because we were about to do new stuff on our menus and all that stuff. So I was, decided I'm gonna go to church tomorrow. And that night is actually the next day is when I emailed you. I was sleeping and just it was a nice night. I opened the window to let the breeze in. Obi and Ruby are sleeping on my bed with me, and Cody and I actually we had stayed up till about 2 in the morning playing Call of Duty with one of our buddies, and around 2:30 is when I finally go to sleep, and I wake up at 3:45. The reason why I know is because I look at my phone and it's 3:45. I'm like, hey, I'm no, I was like, I still got a little bit of time because I have to wake up at it's 8 because church starts at 9. And I put my phone down, I roll back over on my side and start facing this way, and I fall back asleep. And 4 o'clock on the dot, I feel a tightness on on my throat, and I could feel something squeezing. And I wake up because it's hard to breathe, and he's right there, his nose to nose, and he's squeezing, and I start screaming. Because like that's the thing is like people's like a lot of people when I talk about it, I was like, well, why don't you just cast it away? Because it comes when you're not ready,
Yeah,
it comes
man.
when you're not expecting it. And when you're in a sensitive state like that, you're scared. So I'm laying, I see him and he's squeezing my nose. Obi snips at his wrist, but it obviously because I wake up screaming, Obi and Ruby wake up. Obi snips at his wrist and it goes through like smoke, basically. Doesn't even
Mm.
get it. And he just starts laughing and he starts backing up into the shadows. And it was so intense for me. I started tearing up.
Yeah,
Cody
man.
was home. I go into his room to check on him and he's wide awake, just sitting there staring at me. And I was like, you okay? And he's like, bro, what was that? Because he heard me screaming. And so I sat on the edge of the bed and I started crying. And I mean, I'm like, I know I have to hold it together because it's my little brother. Yeah, he's 27, but he ain't never seen me cry like that.
Right.
Uh, so I snap out of it. And I was like, dude, I'm all right. I was like, I'm okay. And I said, just go back to bed. Just want to make sure you're all right. And he's like, I'm okay. And he lays back down. I go back in my room with my dogs. And that whole night, I could feel him. I could just feel the presence of him. So I really didn't sleep that night. And it was like last night. Like I didn't see nothing, but I could feel him.
Yeah.
He was definitely letting me know he's there. And because I was like, I know there's, obviously we had our appointment today to talk, I was like, I know he knows I'm gonna be talking about some stuff. So
Yeah, man. Yeah. Daggone. One, you're extremely brave to keep at it, to keep going forward. Uh, I do have questions though, Daniel.
ask
I
away,
got
man.
I got
Ask,
questions.
ask away.
In your email, and I don't know if you want to go over this or not. So if I need to edit it, let me look at the time now. It's 11:42 on mine. Um, you mentioned a possible blood curse.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um,
So
yeah, I wanted to get into that and to see, maybe if you know of something that happened before the age of 3 that might have put something like this on you. And I was going to ask you too, and I can hold the next one to after you explain this, but you clearly led this girl through deliverance, right?
mhm.
Um, have you tried self-deliverance?
So yes and no. And what I mean by that is I've tried throughout the years, man, especially when I lived in Nicole, we were really trying to figure out ways to get this presence away. So we tried sage. We saged the house because people would tell us, use white sage or whatever sage is or whatever.
Right.
And that's, I talked to my uncle and he would tell me the same thing. He's like, no, saging does work. But he said they can still come back. And so we did sage on the houses, wherever I live. My parents have done anointments on the foundations, the windows. We've even done like supernatural where we put salts on the window sills and the doors, and it helps. It does help, but
Yeah.
I mean, it does come back. I've prayed numerous times, that God will, close the door of it, and it hasn't happened yet. Not saying that God can't do it. Obviously, He can. He's all powerful. But this is me being real with you, bro. When I tell you this, I really do believe God allows these things to happen to me specifically because He wants me to be that for Him. He wants me to, when I get in the face of evil, I'm not going to be as afraid as somebody really would be because God, I feel anointed by God to specifically be. I told my mom, I feel like God's calling me to, you know, pray over people who are demon possessed. I
Yeah.
feel like, God allows this stuff to happen to me for my stories, for my novel.
Yeah.
Could I could be a witness for it? Do I like it? Do I like the stuff happening to me? No, man. If I could take it away, if it was up to me, it'd be gone. But I have prayed and I do pray about it. I pray before I go to sleep. I pray, that God, does close the door. But unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet.
But yeah,
Uh,
that reminds me of Paul.
mhm,
The Lord's grace is sufficient. It's like Paul says something to the effect of he had a messenger of Satan, right?
mhm.
That was that he prayed for God to take away from him, but it was part of it. It was part of what he had to do and had to carry with him, and that may very well be it for you. Because yeah, just hearing you talk about this and how you've dealt with it since such a young age, for you to overcome that and to help others with that, it does sound like you're being called, especially with your dream,
Mhm.
to a deliverance ministry, deliverance or exorcism, however, whatever word you want to use, but it's part of the Great Commission, right? To cast out demons. Jesus, that's part of the job. That's what he told us to do.
Absolutely. And I do believe, I was like I told my mom the other day, I said, Mom, the veil is thinning.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
I was like, this veil is thinning way, way so, way more than when we were kids and even, before my generation. And I was like, it's darkness is coming. And I was like, I know it, I could feel it. And I was like, I really do believe. And that's the thing is that dream, I have that dream pretty often. It's not just one time dream. And I'm not saying it's me seeing the future or anything like that, but I do believe that God is calling me to be a witness and to be able to use me to deliverance and that's why I just felt a sense of urgency on my novel and I want to be I want to be that. To go back to the blood curse though,
Yeah,
I do my mom does believe it that me and my brothers are in a blood curse. And the reason why, um, like I said, my uncle very big into the darkness, and like I said, he was a strong believer for many years, And I still believe once saved, always saved. I'm a big believer of that. And I know that the devil really got a hold of him to take him away from his witness. And but with that being said, my uncle him and I would talk all the time, and I would tell him all these things would happen, and he told me, he said, "Daniel, it sounds like to me, or it's linked to you." He says it sounds like to me it's like a blood curse, and not I don't know much of. I know that my biological where I was living was a bad place. I remember a lot of stuff. I don't like clowns, and that's a big reason because of where we live, and so like just a lot of darkness there. And so we do kind of believe that there may have been some occult action there. My uncle asked me one day, and it was kind of weird. He had called me out of the blue. I was going through a lot of stuff at the time, and I was really focusing on my writing as well. And he said, "Dan, I'm gonna ask you a couple questions." He called me Danny. Only my mom's side calls me Danny, really. And he's like, "Danny, I got a question for you." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "It's gonna sound a little weird, but he's like, just bear with me." And I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Hey, first question is are you and Michael fascinated with Egyptian culture?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, I really am. I've always been fascinated. I think pharaohs are, just the concept of it is like Moses is one of my favorite Bible stories. I just love Egyptian culture. And he's like, "Well, I really believe that the demon that oppresses you is from Egyptian times, like from the Egyptian culture." And he said that, and he said, "I believe that it's a blood curse." And he said, "Let me ask you this." He's like, "Do you have any scars on you that you can't explain?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Do you have a scar on you that you don't know where it came from?" Like, and this is what he said, and these are all points that is really big in witchcraft. And that's what he says, what they do, like sacrifices or blood rituals, they cut from these spots because it's pure. It's supposed to be a pure. And he said, the younger you are, the more pure the blood is what they believe. He said, "Do you have a cut or a scar underneath your chin, on your inner thigh, your pelvic?" He's naming different spots. And I have a scar on my pelvic, and it's about this big. And so I was like, "Yeah, I actually do." And he said that, and I'm not saying that's what it is, but he said that's what he said, "Dan, I really believe that's what it is, Daniel." He said, "I really believe it's a blood curse. I believe that they used you because you were the youngest.
Yeah.
So you had the most pure blood at the time." And
Yeah.
he said, "That's why it's fixated on you more than your brothers." And "Yeah, I do. I have a scar there. I never knew where it came from." And so when he had said that, I was like, "Yeah, I actually do." So yeah, and then one time he even told me, when we were on the phone, my mom doesn't know this, but he had told me, he's like, "Yeah," he's like, "Your mom used to talk to me about stuff because she always thought there was a darkness over you guys." And he said, "I did too. We used to talk about it a lot. We used to converse it, me and your mom." And he's like, "And one time, Danny," he's like, um, "one time," he's like, "when you and Michael were playing." Because Mike and I he used to say we were like bears because we would wrestle a lot. And he said, "One time you guys were playing wrestling." And he said, I looked over and I watched you guys. And he said, "I saw something stand over you, coordinating you guys like puppets." And he said, "I've always knew there was a darkness." And he says, he's like, "I've always prayed." And here's the thing, nothing against, I love my uncle, nothing against him, but he always, because he was, like I said, he was so big in Christianity for so long. But then when the devil got a hold of him, he really believed in other stuff. And some of the stuff he believed in, I didn't really, listen to or believe in, because we talked about a bunch of stuff. But he said, "I used to really," he always said that you'd always pray angels of protection over us because he did believe, that there was something dark. So I know my uncle would pray for us all the time. I know my parents do, and my family does, and stuff. So prayer is very big and powerful.
Yes.
But yeah, I do believe my mom does too. We do believe there is a blood curse there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Uh, that's what I was thinking. Because I know we hadn't touched on that, but to be afflicted in this way at such a young age, and it's obviously not a haunted house. It's something that's followed you. It's an attachment to you. That's just the only thing that made sense. Was that there's some kind of occult activity or something that might have brought all this on, or God's will.
Yeah.
Like you said, it could be a combination of both.
Yeah,
God,
it could be both, man.
because God takes what's bad and turns it, for the good, right? For those
Absolutely.
who believe. So either way, you're doing the Lord's work, man. And shout out to your parents again, not because they listen to the show, which I love that, and I'm so grateful for that. But they adopted half a dozen kids. They rescued that golden retriever. They live for the Lord. They travel wherever God sends them. I'm just
Mhm.
like, man, these sound like salt of the earth people.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? And you're right with them. Here you go, dedicating your life. You're giving up whole summers to just help kids. I don't know. I think you guys are beautiful people, man.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my parents are phenomenal people. And that's my dream is one day to be able to give back to them like they did to us. They tried for 13 years to have their own and they just weren't able to. God didn't allow that to happen. But they what actually the reason why my parents knew that me and Michael were the ones to adopt is long story short, their friend who was a lawyer had reached out to him and said that hey, we got a couple boys that are up for adoption if you guys would be interested. And my parents had just lost. They were in the process of adopting a young girl and they ended up losing her because the mom wanted her back. So my parents were like, man, we really don't want to do that. We don't know if we want to right now because we're still hurting. And then my dad's friend, who's a lawyer, he's like, well, you might want to consider this because this is the boy, one of the boys' birthdays. And my birthday is exactly the same day as my dad's, 30 years apart.
Yeah.
And so they knew that was like a sign from God that, hey, these are going to be your boys. And so they ended up, that's why they decided to jump on it and end up adopting us. And so I'm 30, I'll be 35 this year. So almost 32 years of adoption. Mhm.
That is wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Thank the Lord. My wife and I, we had discussed adoption, years and years and years ago. And you just started listening to the show. So there's so much that I have shared because I'm pretty much an open book. But I was married previously, and I was going through when we were just discussing adoption. I was going through custody issues, trying to get custody of my daughter at that time. And I just told my wife, I was like, we never know what the Lord has in store. Let's just, whatever you want to do, but let's just see what God has for us. Because by the time we met, I was 30 or 29 when me and my wife met. And, kids, for us to have our own kids, that was kind of off the table already. And so one thing led to another. I did wind up, we got custody of my daughter for a couple of years, and I explained what all goes on with that in the show. It's not a beautiful story. It's kind of a hard thing to talk about. But also, my nephew, he moves in with us when he's like 17 years old, and he's been like one of our kids from the get-go. He's kind of a rough and tumble kid, but he had some stuff going on. I'm not trying to air out his laundry, but a time came up to where he needed a good place to live, right? So his senior year of high school, I go get him that summer before his senior year, and I bring him to the house. And my wife and I have had him ever since, and it's been about 4 years now that we've had him. So we look at him like he's our adopted kid.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I see you got tattoos too. I'm covered in tattoos. My wife and he and my wife went out last year and got adoption tattoos together.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
To make that bond even tighter. He's just been a blessing. There's ups and downs, especially coming in that late. You know what I mean? But I have a real soft spot for fostering and adopting and just loving when you don't have to love. You know what I mean? It's choosing your family is a
Yep.
big deal, man. And
Yep. That's what my
hat
mom always said.
yeah, man, hats off to your parents. I don't know. That's the thing. It's just a beautiful thing. It's just
Thank you.
that kind of love. That's next level love, man. All right. I've sat here and I've cried and I've got chills and I've heard stuff moving in my room. I've just tried to ignore it. Daniel, please plug away at this book again because my copy will be here Wednesday. I ordered it while we were sitting here.
Oh, thank you. I
Uh,
appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. I can't wait to get a hold of it. The Wringler, A Letter from Home. Where all can they find it? I know Amazon because that's where I got it at.
Yes, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, um, anywhere that sells books, man. It's available online. That actually, if you like, when you Google me, like they're selling it in China and UK and Australia and all over. So it's it's my prayer that it goes nationwide because or whatever because it's a Christian book and I even talk about the plan of salvation in the book. I don't know many stories that do that and but yeah, it's definitely Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those good things and outlets. It should be in stores. Actually, like we could buy hard copies sometime this year. They do a lot of online stuff right now, and I do ebooks and stuff too. But yeah, man, if you want a copy, feel free to go get one. I'm going to start trying to travel more and then try to do book signings and stuff. But I did one book signing in California where I grew up, which was really cool. A lot of fun. And then so it's just, whatever God, the doors that God opens and allows me to walk through is the ones I'm going to take. And
Yes.
I'm humbled by it, but I'm thank you for purchasing. I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I think that'd be great if you could travel, do some book signings. I I try to hit a convention or two each year and set up, and
Hmm.
just meet people, sell a little bit of swag, a little bit of merch. So one of these days we might have tables beside each other or something out there,
How
man.
cool would that be, man?
I would love it. I
Yes,
would
sir.
love it, man. Uh, but yeah, if there's nothing else left to discuss for today, we will we'll end this one here. I might break this into a two-parter. We went about 3 hours.
I kind of figured. I told my mom, I was like, Mom, we probably break it down. Probably won't be one full show, but definitely. And anytime if you ever need anything, email me. Call. You have my number too. If you want to call me, feel free.
Yeah, man.
You ever want me on the show again? Feel free to reach out. Need
Hey,
whatever prayer support, anything.
absolutely, absolutely. I do want to keep in touch. I'm going to text you later. That way we have personal numbers back and forth because I like to keep in touch with you, man. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to talk to you about,
Absolutely,
off camera.
absolutely, man.
All right,
Absolutely.
brother.
God bless you, man. I appreciate
Hey,
you.
God bless you and thank you for your time. And we'll definitely keep in touch.
Yes, sir, man.
All right,
Thank you.
brother.